Vítáme vás v Deloitte, kde již za několik málo okamžiků zahájíme digitalizaci Česka. A jak? No přeci za využití nejmodernějších technologií, ale taky mnoha skvělých lidí, českých i zahraničních expertů. Vítejte na konferenci o digitalizaci Česka, která vás přenese ze současnosti do budoucnosti. Digitalizace Česka startuje. Připravit, pozor, teď! Ahoj Diano, zdravím tě z budoucnosti.
Ahoj Diano, i já tě zdravím, ale ze současnosti.
Měli jste v tom roce 2021 pravdu. Česko opravdu potřebovalo digitalizovat.
Ano, je to tak. Historicky jsme byli inovátorskou velmocí a je nejvyšší čas na tuto tradici navázat. Proto jsme připravili sérii konferencí, kterou jsme nazvali CzechSetGo, a klade si za cíl na pomoci pochopit, proč je digitalizace Česka tak důležitá a zároveň navrhnou konkrétní kroky, jak této digitalizace docílit. A teď mi řekni, jestli to vlastně vůbec pomohlo.
Ve světě se o vás opět ví. O těch vašich zlatých českých ručičkách ani nemluvím. Jste na špici ve výzkumu a vývoji?
To moc ráda slyším. Tak co se nám tedy povedlo?
Vaše digitální já a všechny kroky, které uděláte, se budou odvíjet od toho, co uděláte právě dnes. Ale to vy moc dobře víte.
Ano, víme a jdeme na to, protože naše budoucnost ta právě začíná teď. Vítám vás všechny na konferenci CzechSetGo. Doufám, že si ji plně užijete a věřte tomu, že dnešek a budoucnost závisí na tom, co společně zvládneme.
A vy už sledujete konferenci CzechSetGo. Moje jméno je Lucie Hrdličková a vítám vás u digitalizace Česka. A zanedlouho začne vůbec první panel konference, který se zaměří na klíčovou roli státu při vytváření přátelského prostředí pro lidi a také pro rozvoj podnikání. Diskuzí vás provede vedoucí partner Deloitte v oddělení Consultingu Pavel Šiška, který si pozval významné postavy z oblasti digitalizace z Česka i ze zahraničí. Dívejte se.
Klíčová role státu při vytváření přátelského prostředí pro lidi a rozvoj podnikání.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning to the panelists. Good morning to the people who are watching us online. And welcome to the first stream of our conference and the first panel of that stream. As it was said, we will focus on digitalization. We will focus on moving our economy more towards the knowledge-based economy, and digitalization and government play important role in that. We want the conference to be really conclusive. We don't want to have one of these conferences when people talk, when there is a consensus, when there is a love in the air, but at the end of the day, nothing happens. We want to end up in the day two when we have discussion on the initiatives and topics that we would like to push forward, things that we would like to implement. We want them to be very specific. We want them to be things that we can, as the panelists, for example, people in this building, or even you guys who are watching us, that we will be able to really do, implement, push forward. Thank you to the guys in the audience who actually offered their help and support. That's really appreciated, and we will try to take your ideas into consideration and use your help. You know, that's very important to us. We will obviously ask the traditional questions, yeah, what the role of the government is, what are the components, what we have done, but we would also like to focus on things that we believe are not discussed that often. For example, when you look at the open government that is open in terms of data, systems, well-documented APIs, and giving the room for the people, for businesses, for non-profit, non-government organizations to build things for themselves, for others. Maybe that actually is a topic that would deserve a conference by itself. Yeah? Eva will, talk about, I think, about the government officers, yeah? And we often forget about those. Yeah? That's another angle that I haven't really heard that many times in conferences like that, and that can be also something that is going to move us forward. But I would also like to discuss topics, and hopefully the panelists, and maybe we will get some ideas from the audience and questions like that. Let's look at it even in more unorthodox way. Yeah? What about gamification in public sector? Yeah? Why limited to just collecting the bills and receipts from the citizens and improve tax collection? This can be used for other purposes. Yeah? So hopefully that during the discussion we will come up with ideas that will be really, good, but more importantly, implementable. Yeah? So, if I may, I will show just two simple slides. One actually shows, and I use the e-participation index from the UN that is closest to what we are talking about, yeah? The connection between government, citizens, and businesses. And I mapped our journey since 2003. This is, by the way, one of the few indexes that actually can show us such a long period of time. And I was trying to put in the important events, yeah, that were actually happening, starting with the creation of the Ministry of IT. And as you can see, that didn't necessarily help, to move us up in the ranking. But maybe it was just because the others were not just standing. Yeah, they were moving as well, because indexes are about relative performance. Yeah, and so then we have other things that we will get to at the end. Which is actually the strategy, and we have many new events that are happening. In the recent years. So that's where we are, and that's where we start with, and that's where we should start our discussion, and that's also the time to introduce our great panelists, yeah, who actually invested the time, into this, and as you can see, we have people with really great backgrounds and people whose time is really precious, and I would really like to thank you guys for being with us, for making that investment that I know is not small. Yeah. So I will start with the panelists in the studio. Yeah. So we have Pavel Doležal, CEO of Kebula, and also founder of the COVID-19 initiative, something that was created with the government and your great startup. So you are the representative of the startups here, right? If we can call you startup. Eva Pavlíková, co-founder and CEO Česko Digital, non-profit organization.
Thank you for inviting. Nice to be here.
Vlado Dzurilla, CIO, digital ambassador, if I may say so, for the Czech government.
Thank you for the invitation.
Then I'm turning to the guys who are online. So I will start with Eve Peterson, who is the head of Startup Estonia. So welcome and thank you. And hopefully I'm pronouncing your names right. And if not, excuse me. Barry Laurie, CIO Government, Ireland. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Andrek Önik, Global Affairs Director, Government of Estonia.
Morning, everybody.
Martin Jan, Member of the Board, Sales and Marketing, Škoda Auto. Thank you, Martin.
Good morning. Hi, good morning.
And Matěj Chytil, representative of municipalities, but also, as I understand, big fan of government and student of Master of Public Affairs, you know, in University of Oxford. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
So thank you again for joining us. And it would be great if you could return back to the first slide. And I would ask Vlado to tell us a few words about how he sees Czech Republic and how he sees the events and correlation to how the index is, or our ranking actually, is developing, and what you believe is happening within the last, 6-7 years. And there are some critics, 70 billion Czech crowns spent, we don't see where it is. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I do not think that it's that we cannot see where the money are, but on the other hand, yeah, digitalization in Czech Republic, it's happening in the waves. The waves were happening around 2010 when basic register, data box, and checkpoints, for example, very important services for our citizens happened. And then we were struggling for a little while. And then from the year 2017, we started to work on it again with a digital Czech strategy and with a really nice concept how to move us forward. With the intention not to only put us and to put the emphasis on the backend system, but finally to put the citizens in front of us. And then we immediately started to work on the digital services for the citizens and also for the entrepreneurs and companies. So Citizen Portal was introduced, and yeah, we still were in lack of identities, digital identities, and then we had to prepare the legislation as well for the identity and all of those, because yeah, as it's in government, you can do what is in legislation written, like basically. So from this year, we are part of the, I would say, privileged countries where bank ID can be used also for entering digital services of the government. And yeah, I think it's going to be a break-even point when everyone who will wake up in the morning one day and his bank is already in the system and his identity can be used, then everyone for us is a customer, and everyone who is using business, not business, but banking, internet banking, is definitely customer for us. So that's why I think it's going to be like a break-even point for us, and digitalization will start moving much forward. Because we were always saying that what can be first, digital services or identity? Why to have identity if there are not services? Why to have services if no one has identity? So now everyone does. So everyone has identity, and now it's upon us and upon every ministry to bring all the services alive.
Yeah. Thank you for the input. Maybe let's look at it from the perspective of other countries. But before we go to the panelists, I would like to start with Poland. Yeah, for many people that would not be, a country that you will find in the conferences, a country that is a role model for digitalization, etc., etc. But they have done a lot within the last 6-7 years in terms of making them much more competitive and attractive for investors, for example, as well, in professional services, in value-added products, and value-added services. Yeah? And we can see it in our own business, yeah, because we are actually competing in that domain, and we are definitely competing with Poland. What we see in Poland, it's partially cultural. They are entrepreneurial, yeah? And now the entrepreneurship is enabled by underlying structures that is driven by government, but also creating different VC funds, you know, but also by, for example, the level of taxation and labor cost, which is another panel that some of you will be part of. But when I take our own example, the consulting in Czech Republic, with half of the people, is paying the same social and security insurance as the guys in Poland. So if you really want to support professional services, value added, you know, with that type of approach might be difficult. So Poland has done a lot. We can see it, and it's not necessarily the first country that would come to your mind. So I thought I would mention it, and it would be great that later we come back to this one. Then North Korea is also a great example. That's the typical. South Korea. Excuse me. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, for some things maybe it could be. Yeah, so South Korea, they typically lead the pack, yeah, in many dimensions. They have this interesting combination of discipline, but at the same time entrepreneurship, which, for example, in Japan, that you would believe is similar, is not there. Japanese are missing the passion for startups and entrepreneurship. Yeah, there's a huge difference, you know, interesting. But government is involved. You know, they're investing heavily. Yeah, the R&D spending is actually number 2 after Israel. Yeah, and also the tax incentives to attract, you know, foreign investment is interesting. And also, what is also interesting is the focus on gaming, for example. That is growing, and life sciences as well. So those are really interesting things that I noticed. But let's go to the guys online, and if we can go to Ireland now, yeah. So what is your view on why you are successful as a country? And what have you done, and how you see your relative position to the others, and the way forward?
Well, I guess the template that we've used isn't terribly different to the template that other countries use. Our strategy was very much based on 4 building blocks. Our ambition was to use a portal to enable the citizen to very, very easily access and use government services. And then the building blocks that enabled that were, first of all, make better use of our data. So we very much aligned with the Tallinn Declaration, the idea of once only, to make sure that our infrastructure was simplified and aligned to meet citizen needs, to make sure that we had the skill sets in government at both professional ICT and civil service level, that we could digitize services and redesign services better. And then finally, to make sure that the governance was in place. And that governance, of course, includes legislation. As Vladimir said in the discussion, it's really important for government to have proper legislative underpinnings in how it provides those digital services. A big area of growth for us has been the take-up of our electronic IDs. We're now one of the fastest growing countries in the world in actual use of electronic IDs. And that's very much escalated over 2020 because of the pandemic, when normal government offices weren't open and people rushed to use the digital equivalent. So that's really helped the growth of our use of digital services.
Thank you very much. Indrek, how about Estonia? And from what you heard, what would you add, and what would you recommend as a priorities for the way forward?
Well, as Vladimir and Barry already mentioned, these are quite similar views that we all have here. I mean, having a strong, well-distributed, used digital identity amongst the population, having a solution for interoperability between government and private sector entities, having solid infrastructure and connectivity so that people actually do have access to these digital channels, then also a single point of entry as a government portal where all of the services are available. These are all the same things that we have been doing in, I believe, in those countries, at least in these two countries, very similarly. I would maybe also add the one aspect which is definitely very, very important. It's on one side, it is service design. The aspect that people need to find the service is also convenient to use, and there needs to be a sort of benefits involved when they use them. Either it's faster, it is less costly to them, it is more convenient to use, something like that. And on the other side, just basic skills of individuals. We can't really assume that people will start using digital services one day if they don't have the basic skills. Back, way back when we started, it was really about the basics, how to turn on a computer, how to access the internet, how to type something, how to print something. What is a mouse? People with no previous experience with computers, they didn't know what a mouse is. Today, you really don't need to talk about mouses. We have touch screens and so on. And today we have been focusing more also on the secure side of using digital services, that people wouldn't get victims of fraud, that they wouldn't, too easily become victims of ransomware and so on. So there are different aspects, and as you have the basics laid, which are the building blocks that have been mentioned today here, the digital identity, the legislation, which is the foundation of any type of innovation, really, that should be supporting, precise to the point that it's supporting but not burdening the service providers, not burdening the companies, entrepreneurs, the people. And then at the same time, that is precise enough, as I said. So if those building blocks are there, then it's really about making the whole experience more convenient. And it's not really like in the field of dreams that if you build, they will come, but you have to provide a good service and then they will come. So this is maybe my 5 cents on that topic.
That's, and you actually opened the topic, and when I was listening to you, you spent quite considerable amount of time on the user-friendliness, how the services are designed. Maybe it's time to turn to Eva, to tell us her experience, from those interactions, and what can be done.
Yeah, I want to support those talks, because I think the digitalization is not about the technology, but it's about the people, and it's about how to educate even society, but also the public employee. Because without the education and how the digitalization can help their daily work, we cannot be successful.
Yeah. So, and before we move on, how about municipalities? Let's stay now a little bit more on the government side still, yeah. And since we have Matěj here, what would be your point of view, given what you have heard so far?
Thank you, Pavel, for this question. I'll probably build up what my colleagues have said. So I think we're in agreement on the foundations blocks, but I'd like to pinpoint those that are not so often mentioned in the Czech debate. And so Barry mentioned as one of the Irish strategy founding blocks, the skill set in the government. And I think Eva also tapped into this. I believe this is extremely important because it's very hard to build to co-create the environment where businesses are thriving if part of the creators don't have the organization cultures and the skill set necessary to do that. If we keep missing this point, I think it will be hard for us to continue thriving, because all those other founding blocks will be way harder to design, to legislate, and to implement. So
You said at the beginning that I'm a big fan of government. It's not a very typical, fan club. We're a very small fan club actually, especially in the Czech Republic. And I think we should grow a little bit bigger. Not the government, but the fan club. So that would be my focus, and I'll be happy to expand on that during this panel. But I think at the moment this will be my 2 cents here. The skill set in government is the crucial thing.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So let's try now go to the businesses, and maybe let's start with Martin. Yeah, since we are now turned to the online panelists. Martin, anything that you would like to add to this part of the discussion? Meaning, government versus businesses, position of the Czech Republic, the building blocks, where we are, where we would like to be.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think it's very good and a very important initiative also for automotive industry. We have to transform ourselves, and digitalization is an important part of this, together with electric mobility, which brings me to the first point that we need to exchange data sets and data between government and businesses in a more digital way. When I think about electric mobility, for example, the operators of charging stations should report them to the Ministry of Industry, but we do it in an analog form with the paper, and on the other hand, there are no available digital data sets about the charging stations in the Czech Republic. So that's already one thing where we could improve, and we also identified another almost 40 data sets that we could exchange with the government. For example, the data about unprotected railways crossings, which could improve the safety of transportation, and on the other hand, we can offer to provide aggregated data from our shock absorbers to give a good overview of the conditions of the road for their repair. So there's a lot of room for exchange of data between government and businesses. And as a last example, I would like to use the exchange of data between the tax offices, labor offices, social and healthcare insurance providers, because we employ over 40,000 people, and we exchange all these data still in paper form. So if we could digitalize this, that would save a lot of paper and, of course, make our processes much more convenient and much more fast. And a last small example would be a digital signature on the labor contract. That's also something that I think in the new digital age we should have. Yeah. So there are lots of examples where we can save a lot of time, a lot of paper when businesses and government exchange more data in a digital way.
Thank you for the input. So basically what you are saying, and that's coming back to what I mentioned shortly and I wanted to raise later in the discussion, that's the open government in terms of data systems, APIs, and maybe you building on top of that something that you will use for yourself that would make you more efficient, maybe something that could be shared with others. So do I understand that correctly? That was the message, I would say, as well.
Yeah, that's one of the key messages from my side. I think that digitalization is a buzzword, yeah, but we have to be careful and efficient. We should not digitalize everything. We should go according to priorities and look at activities that would save time and save paper and basically make the interaction between government and businesses more convenient and more efficient.
Yeah. And mentioning pragmatism and the smaller companies and startups have to be really pragmatic. Yeah, that's how it is. So maybe now let's go back to the studio, and Pavel, who's actually eager to say something. I could see it. So what would be your perspective?
Thanks for having me here. I will probably be a little bit more controversial. I mean, I agree with everything everybody said, but I think we are solving or talking about the wrong part of the way. I don't have any problem with, doing data. Well, that's what we do, right? That's what we help with doing applications, doing digital access. It's easy. Like we've proven it as a Czech society, as people working, for Apple's, Facebook's, like doing startups like Jakub had, that we can do this. That's no issue. We have in my opinion, we are not talking about the elephant, the first principle. In order to actually do something, you need to have a vision. What is the future going to look like? Not about talking, like, oh, we want to be like 5 years ago, your boss telling me, like, we want to be in the future like Estonia. And I'm like, that's not future, that's current. What is the future as being the next step, right? It's different from today. So I think, like, we don't have a vision, what is the future, So now Apple is actually virtualizing the world. Every single centimeter will have its own IP address, and you can, virtualize it. And in order to move forward, you need to have a vision, and you need to have a crisis or compelling event to do that. So in my opinion, we should talk really what is the future. For me, it's a virtual layer on top of the normal world, so we can interact with it. Yes, exchange data, put it together, that's underneath it. But second, we need to have a compelling event. Like we in Czech love to talk about Baťa, right? He was a great man, but he had two compelling events. He was known as the mayor of Zlín, and as the big guy who did a lot of business, right? But he had two compelling events. He had the First World, there was a crisis, and in order to become a mayor of Zlín, he said everybody has to vote for me, otherwise I'm not going to do it. And our compelling event, you talk about Poland, Ireland, Estonia, they had geopolitical events. We didn't. We were very well off. Now we have two compelling events, in my opinion, which is great. We have a crisis with COVID that can help us, and we've seen how people can get together during the crisis and move. And we have Škoda, which is, as our biggest, industry leader. For years, they were just in the old world. But now, in the last 2 years, they've done so much, and they want to be in the virtual electric world because they have pressure from competitors. And these two events, if we have the right vision, can just propel us. Everything else, digital identity, the law taking 10 years to do, we can do it in 10 days. We've seen that. But we need to talk about what is our vision and align around that. Everything else is easy.
Good point. I could give you many examples. Thank you. This was actually a very good point. Going back to our online panelists. So Eva, last but not least, what are the Estonian entrepreneurs saying about that?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this very important panel. And as a first thing, I'd like to say that there is more and more talk and more initiatives on country level as well as the EU level about how to, bring in all that potential that is here in Europe, how to really, set the vision, as was mentioned, and how to really dream big, and how to be better than the US, be better than Asia. And we've been in close contact with Czech Invest and Czech startups. And I've seen that we share a lot of the same problems, I would even say, and we're tackling kind of the same issues as to what potential we have and how to best support it so that it really brings us great things in the economy. What I'd like to say, maybe if I can take a few minutes, I'd really love the thought that we do have to have a vision first and dream big. We've set goals, and I'm glad to see that our government really also has this vision, and startups do play a key role in future economy. And we don't really see a significant part of GDP being produced by startups at the moment, but really taking into account that we do have the green transition coming, digital transition coming. There is the crisis going on, but there is potential in people, in science. So what if we do get to 30% of GDP by 2030? And the big kind of the thought behind it is that we don't need to talk about startups as a special needs kid anymore, but it's a normal part of economy. It's just one way to do business. And a few components or catalysts that I'd like to mention that have worked for Estonia to become really that kind of top unicorn country in the EU and the top country that has most startups per capita. We've had a lot of trust by the government, and we do have a plan. And there is a funding for this program called Startup Estonia, which then has to tackle kind of the small problems that occur that kind of don't help people to make businesses. So to really make sure that business environment works well, that doesn't mean that we need special laws for startups, but just to kind of pinpoint these little obstacles that are in the way and get those out of the way. For example, the startup visa program, which is working very well, which is helping us to alleviate the workforce issues, which I believe are everywhere in startups all over Europe. And another part is that I'd like to say that we've had a share of luck as well. Since the exit of the well-known Skype, there was a kind of a wave of entrepreneurship, a wave of new companies coming up, because people really saw that it's a real business. It's not something that young boys do in a garage secretly, but it can be profitable, and it's real work. And from that on, people built new companies that became new unicorns, and they became investors. They brought the knowledge to a broader audience. More people are now seeing what is possible, and this great network is kind of spilling over and creating this atmosphere. I think that this is kind of something that you can't really force to happen, sort of, but governmental support and initiatives to help in the birth of necessary services that are necessary for startups. I don't know, incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, you name it. So these are some of the things that can help to really bring the community together and help thrive.
Yeah, Eva, thank you very much. You mentioned one thing that is not necessarily about the subsidies and government, being the one who's driving it necessarily, although that can be part of it. It's about building trust. It's about creating an environment that helps, having startups, growing that part of the economy. We have actually a question for the audience. In 5 minutes, we should ask the audience. But before we do so, I would like to say one thing. The building trust between government and businesses, that is very important. And typically, trust is driven by simplicity and transparency. And that, if achieved, then I believe that the startup businesses, the big corporations, they will say that we are successful because we are in the Czech Republic. They are not going to say we are successful despite the fact that we are in the Czech Republic. And that's the question that we are going to ask our audience. So I will switch to Czech now, because I'm going to be talking to the audience. So especially the online panelists, excuse us for a second. We will ask the question, we will have the polling, and then we will come back to you, and we will say how the polling ended up. Okay?
A já než v režii spočítají hlasy.
Přátelé, kteří nás sledujete, teď už na svých obrazovkách vidíte vidíte otázku, na kterou prosíme, abyste vybrali jednu možnost, které věříte, že je tou správnou odpovědí. Ta otázka, a máte na to 1 minutu, přečtu otázku a dvakrát vám zopakuji ty možnosti. Jak říkám, vyberte prosím jednu z nich. Pokud byste zakládali firmu mimo Českou republiku, které kritérium by pro vás bylo při výběru vhodné země rozhodující? Jo, vyberte jedno. Za prvé, nízké korporátní daně, cena práce, stabilní a předvídatelné právní prostředí a vymahatelnost práva, státní pobídky, nízká administrativní a byrokratická zátěž podnikatelů. Takže ještě jednou. Nízké korporátní daně, cena práce, stabilní a předvídatelné právní prostředí a vymahatelnost práva, státní pobídky, anebo nízká administrativní a byrokratická zátěž podnikatelů. A hlasování ukončíme teď.
A já než v režii spočítají hlasy, poděkuji mezi tím partnerům konference CzechSetGo. A těmi jsou Česko Digitál, Česká spořitelna, Škoda Auto, Nadační fond na podporu vědy Neuron, Seznam Zprávy a také Ekonomia a CzechCrunch.
Wow. So, hope our online panelists can see the results. I will just quickly tell them what the result was. I'm not going to tell you how I would vote, but from my perspective, this is really interesting and positive, I would say. So, the guys who do not understand Czech, the question was, what would be the criteria that would be the one that you would pick, that would be the decisive one, if you were selecting a country where you would start your own company? And surprisingly, it's not the low corporate taxes, it's not the government subsidies, it's not even the labor cost, it's not even the bureaucracy, although that rated second. It was the stable, predictable law environment and law enforceability. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it says something about our country or if it's something that is generic, but that's the result. And as you can see, 73% is really something that is actually quite strong. Mindful of time, we have approximately 20 minutes to the end. We may accommodate some questions if they come, but now I would like to ask you guys, both in the studio and the panelists, if you could hopefully in 1 minute summarize what you think about how the poll, how the voting ended up. Yeah, I would be really interested in your opinion, how you see that. And second, any remarks in terms of the topics based on the previous discussion and your opinion in general? What would be the topics that we should push forward? Because our discussion, I actually noted some good ideas, but again, you know that our ultimate goal is to take something pragmatic, some initiatives that we can actually do together and push and improve the environment in the country. So I will just do it in a simple way. I will go, from my right, through the studio, and then go to you guys who are online. Yeah? So Pavel, if I can start with you this time.
Well, it's not for me surprising. Like when you start a company, you want to be law and order. I would add one more, and that's the market. You know, like when we select where we go, we select based on the market opportunity. That's the first thing. What we should do, to the second part of the question, actually there is one thing that we've seen last year during the COVID crisis, as when we as a tech sector got together and started to help government, it was working. Then we kind of like went back to our own homes. And I realized one thing, that we need to get together at one table. Tech guys, doesn't matter if they are from startup or from big companies like Škoda or O2. We need to get together with government. We need to get together with cities, and together actually form what is our goals for the future. And only based on that, once we have consensus, we can do something. We have an election coming, which is great, because I believe that there will be at least two parties which are really pro-digitalization, whatever it means. As Martin said, digitalization is a buzzword. We need to have an outcome, Yep. And I think there's a lot of, this crisis helped us. Yeah, we need to get together at one table and just start, drawing concrete steps.
Eva?
Back to the pool, I think it was about the stability, and as Pavel said, it's connected with the vision and the stability and predictability. And if I can have one recommendation, I would support Pavel, because we got experience with COVID portal, what we bring together with Nakit, with Vlado, and it was such an amazing way how to work together. And how to learn, and do more project together, and also bring online the heroes from the government, because we have very good cases what we can show to the society, but we need to bring the people in the government, because they are not in the good position, because we do not trust our politicians and all the stuff. So we should bring and we show them online that they are the heroes and they want to help our state.
It's an idea for next conference for you, Pavel.
Noted. Vlado, thank you.
About the pool, I would agree with that. So nothing to add more, and I will just follow my colleagues here. I think that if we are talking about the digitalization and about the state, it's taken as a whole of government, of course, and it's just taken. The state cannot do that, but state it's 14 ministries, offices, state companies, and all those. So I think it's time to start to look at them separately as well, and to say those are the ones who can do that. Those are the ones who are struggling. There we can help. There we have to help, and then we need to put a focus on. And I think what Eva just said, it's something that it has to be recognized, and it has to be also mentioned for example, in the news and in the newspapers, that something happened also in a good way. Because always you cannot read. For example, if you open the newspaper, you would know only about that something happened and it's wrong. And for example, it's not that wrong, but that something just happened. For example, it's not working or something like that. But you would never hear about the services that are working very properly for years. And then what the citizens should think about it. They are just always reading that it's not working. Why should I use that if it's not working? And then, if I can say one more thing, that in the physical way, we know how to take care about the citizens. If you are going to the office and if you want to get a stamp on your taxi or something like that, you immediately know that you did it right. So we need to let our customers know that they did it right, even when they are doing it digital.
Yeah.
To make them sure that it's done right.
Yeah. If I, being on the panel, although I'm the moderator and the host, I consider myself being part of the panel. So if I may also comment before we get to the guys online, the poll probably was not surprising. I would expect a little bit more even distribution and more expectation in terms of the less bureaucracy, etc., etc. I think it a little bit tells, and that's what Vlado said, I think, that the perception in the country is that the law enforceability is not that good, etc., etc. So to some extent, it's a little bit biased, given how the news are actually being created, etc., etc. So that's one comment. Second, the vision, that was something that I've heard several times, and I agree with that. And maybe if you go back to the beginning of our panel and also how we were trying to build the conference, we are trying to avoid as much as possible the word digital and digitalization. Yeah, we use it because it's attractive, yeah, don't get me wrong, but we know that it's just a mean to achieve something. Yeah? And ultimately, what we are trying to push by any means, and hopefully this conference will help, all of us with that, is really move the Czech Republic and the Czech economy into the space of products and services with value added, knowledge-based economy. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal for us. Yeah? And then obviously we can spend again 2 more conferences on that. But that's something that we like to push. And last thing, and Pavel wants to say something. If not, okay. But last thing, I'm really big fan of participation of and collaboration of people and enabling that. And when I had side discussions with some of you, fortunately, I could sense that most of you actually like that approach as well. Yeah? So the idea of opening the government more, encouraging people to cooperate, take initiative, yeah? Within government, outside, yeah? Involving municipalities, anything. Yeah? That is the right way forward. Yeah? So anyway, yeah, Vlado?
Just one thing to add about what Pavel said, because it was very important from my side as well. Because when COVID-19 CZ, the initiative about tech companies started, then we worked together, and everything what I did, we took under our company Naked, and we are now doing the we are working on those technologies still, and what it's going to be very important now. We have the auditing organ now. They are just checking the whole project. So I think when this will end up well, and I hope it's going to be, and it's going to end up well, we have to say that this was just another very, very good example of cooperation. Because on the other hand, I do not think that the state cannot do it itself. You can hear all those panelists as well, that they were very close to the companies, big companies, startups, all those organizations helping. And I think we can do that only together. And if we will be together and bringing all the like technology, and not only technology, but if we'll do that together within the data, within the processes, and we will do that and bring those processes like much easier, it would be.
But most of the panelists said that. I agree. Barry also said that, for example. But Barry also said, and you also repeated it, that we need the legislative environment that is supporting it, and that's making it easier for the people. So do we need something like PSD2 for government? Yeah, because banks, actually there's a regulation and that enables, the environment and actually makes sure that banks are open to startups and third parties. So is it something that we would need? Just maybe Vlado to you or?
Yeah, and we started because of the corona pandemic. That was about the data. Everyone wanted to have data to analyze them by themselves. So companies, they were helping. They were just trying to find the data. And
but was it efficient? Was it really?
Of course,
yeah?
Of course.
Yeah? It changed the whole dynamic.
That was great. So there was the event, as you said, something that triggered it. Yeah, but still, you have audit. You have to be careful because you have to really be compliant, etc., etc. So maybe there could be some changes that would make it even faster.
We need to have
maybe and move it to the situations when we do not have crisis. Make it sort of a common approach. Yeah.
Exactly. We need to have the legislation about the individual anonymized data that can be like publicly given away, and then everyone can like work on that. The businesses can grow up. What was said from Mr. Jan from Škoda Auto, that we can cooperate all together, and they can prepare also services for their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so back to the online panelist. Martin, you have to leave. I know that you had some time constraints. Can we start with you?
No, I think that Yeah, well, thanks for giving me the opportunity again. I have to say that we see today that digitalization also has its limits and we need human contact. I think you had much better interaction with the people sitting with you than with us in the studio. So I really have to say that I think we all look forward to going back to real life contact with real people. To the questionnaire, I would add one very important issue, and that is skilled labor availability. And if the government could do one thing, then it's the support of IT and software-related studies and universities in terms of education, but also R&D and cooperation with private companies, because companies can work around anything. Yeah? All the issues with the taxes and with the legal environment and everything, we can work around it. If you do not have enough people in the country with the skills that you need, there is very little you can do about it. So put more money and more effort on IT and software-related studies. Bring students from other countries to the Czech Republic who would stay here and work here and set up their companies later on. That's what the government should do, and that's absolute number one. Yeah? And if you have the critical mass of people in the educational institutions, students, that will move the country forward. And last issue I would mention is maybe there was a lack of vision, and some people mentioned there was a lack of vision in the discussion. I think digitalization is not anymore about the vision. Digitalization is something that we live in. The beginning of the 19th century was the century of steam. Now this is century of digitalization. In the automotive industry, the transformation is survival of the fittest. It's between car companies and the tech companies. It's either about us learning how to digitalize the cars and put software into the cars, or it's about the tech companies to learn how to make cars. Yeah? So for us, we live in the digitalization. We do not need the vision. The vision is there. Digitalization is basically about our survival and about our future. And I hope that everybody understands this. That the same should be for the state administration, for the government, for the politicians. They should understand. This is not a question whether we do this and how we do it. And what makes me very positive about the Czech Republic is a number of startup and successful Czech companies in IT and software area. I'm really amazed, and there is probably very few other areas where we have so many progressive Czech companies who really made it big time around the world. So that tells me that there is something right in the Czech Republic. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for having me, and look forward to come tomorrow to the studio to have finally some human contact. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Then online, so Eva, you were last. I'm gonna start with you. So going back to the poll and what you consider important.
I would like to expand on a few things. This answer that was given by the audience makes a lot of sense, because when you take it from an entrepreneur's perspective, that's a big decision to move to another country. And of course, what you want is stability, because you have an idea, you have a plan, you have a strategy. You don't want anything to disrupt it or make you change your plan during the way every day. But on the other hand, as a government, when you want to bring about big changes, a big disruption, then this needs to also reflect in the business environment, maybe even in legislation, taxation, etc., etc. So there needs to be a balance. As a government, you need to see where the next big potential is. Even the entrepreneur maybe doesn't see it yet. And talking about the next big wave, it is deep tech. It is a convergence of digital and non-digital. It's a convergence of different approaches. So we see Tesla, we see Pfizer, BioNTech, we see these big deep tech companies coming up. So yeah, you do need stability as an entrepreneur, but as a government, you need to take the responsibility and disrupt even that. So that was just my
interesting point. Barry, what would be your view on the poll, and anything do you like to highlight?
Thank you. Well, yes, I would agree with the views of the poll. I think one of the key things, and as you mentioned, it was in my opening remarks, you need to have a regulatory and legislative environment that encourages entrepreneurial activity, but in such a way that the public feel reassured by what's happening with their data and so on. The other observation that I would make is that you need to have a culture of fostering your startups and fostering entrepreneurship. And in Ireland, a lot of people associate us with multinationals because the headquarters of many of the tech giants would be based in Ireland, their European headquarters. But one of the things we're really trying to do is encourage our startups. And two words actually that were said by previous panels were consensus and doing things together. And that's a big part of the government's new initiative. We've started up a GovTech initiative, and it's about a partnership between government, between the public service as a major buyer of new services, between our startup industry. And what they can bring, obviously, is disruptive technologies. They're usually much quicker to learn how blockchain or AI or IoT can help. And then the fourth things are academia. But I think we need to move our culture from things like the EU Data Governance Act, where it's talking about what you do with data, to actually getting into how data and use of our startups and working with government can solve problems. And that was the big thing about the coronavirus pandemic. We had a big problem to solve, and we got together and we worked out ways to solve that problem, whether it was through vaccination or contact tracing or apps or so on. So we need to move our culture where we're actually getting into a room and we're looking at the problems in the country, whether that's housing, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, and how we use technology and government knowledge and academic knowledge to fix those problems. And we're seeking to do that through our GovTech initiative.
Yeah, clear, thank you. Just a small insert. We have 5 minutes to the end. We also wanted to include some questions from the audience, but we may not be able to make it, but we will come back to the audience. I would still like to hear opinion of the panelists. So we have two remaining. Maybe I will turn to Matěj now, to give us his point of view. Then Indrek, and then depending on what time we have, we could try at least one question. Okay, Matěj, thank you.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. Just 3 brief remarks, and I hope there's time to expand on that. First, I think that the poll might be a little bit misleading for all of us. Entrepreneurs all around the world need stability and enforceability of the law. But if we look around, Europe is full of countries that have pretty stable environment for businesses and in legal terms. So I think we need to think about and beyond this baseline. So my 3 remarks are on clusters, on talent, and on rethinking what the government does, actually. The first one is the path to prosperity has always been clustered, right? From Crompton Mill to Silicon Valley, from the 18th century factories to the startups, the huge unicorns of today. You see prosperity clustered, and we need to acknowledge that and start thinking how can we tap into it and into this mechanism and build clusters in our country and in Europe. Second thing is the public service needs to retain its talent. We're not. I think Martin just left, but how come that we keep losing young, talented individuals like Martin Jan, to the businesses like Škoda? We need a lot more to do to keep talented people in the public service, and that is the risk here is we won't digitalize the country. So if you look at what all of you just said, you agree on most of the founding blocks, and we will digitalize this country. The question is, how do we go into it, and what is the end there? And I think there's more phases of digitalization, and what we're risking is basically just scanning the red tape we have, copying the services we're doing right now into their digital image, and thereby, and this is happening, as all of you know, in the business way faster than in government, and thereby losing to the competition that rethinks the way their business, and in my case, the public service, is done entirely. Be happy to give you examples and expand on that again, but I'll give words to pass to my colleagues. And
yeah. So thank you. We have day two to discuss these details. Indrek, quickly, if I may, your point of view. Thank you.
Yes, I will be quick. Just start with one remark. Being the last one to speak is the most difficult position in a panel, because literally everybody here took my thoughts. I changed my mind, starting with Vladimir, Martin, Eve, Barry, Matej. Everybody took my thoughts. So I'll just add one thing maybe. The concept of having stability, of course, is there, and having this predictable legal environment. And our assumption, I guess, also from the poll comes, is that it's a positive kind of a legal environment. But if it's a stable and predictable, but an awful one to operate in, then you don't want a legal environment like that. But our assumption currently is that it's a good one. So I believe that then the next thing that we need to look at is the change of mindset, or the understanding in governments and private sectors globally, is that the government and the private sector are not really competitors, in a sense that they really want the same thing. They want prosperity to everybody, you know, either the owners of the company or the people of the state, the citizens, the residents, and the mentality should be that we are in this together. So in that sense, I'm a huge fan, for example, of the Estonian Tax and Customs Board, that have tried to make the burden of declaring information to the small and medium-sized enterprises as easy as possible. And the mindset, and it's mind-blowing for some people, is that the Estonian Tax and Customs Board, for example, they know that the declaring information to the small company startups is a difficult task. And it makes no sense that if you have 3 people working, then you have 3 also accountants just to get the administrative burden done. And our Tax and Customs Board have said that, you know, if you decide to give us the information automatically via a business account, via a financial institution or some other way, then we don't need you to fill in declarations. And this understanding, the mentality of this old school mentality of declaring declarations and substituting with direct data exchange, I think this is something that definitely needs to be looked upon also in other countries around the world. And that's maybe my main point here.
Okay, thank you. The time is up almost. I think that when it comes to the questions and to the audience, the questions will not be forgotten, but I would not like to open the question and then not have time to answer it. But this is a working session. We actually have one more day in front of us, so we will definitely try to address the questions that we've received. So that's one thing that I would like to say. The second thing is, and now I have to close the session. Thank you, panelists, for being active, for coming here and being online. I hope that the audience also appreciates your input, and I mean, you know, what has been said, the fact that we will be working on the background on the things, and the day 2, that will be also another time investment that we will make, and also that they appreciate that we had this wide spectrum of opinions and different walks of life, that actually were able to express their opinion and contribute. And I really think that was very valuable, you know, even from the high-level discussion on the vision, and also many little things that we are actually collecting on the background, and we will come back tomorrow with the suggestions how to structure the next step. So from my perspective, given the time that we had, there is never enough time, you know, I would consider the panel successful. And thank you very much to all of you. The guys on the background are telling me that we still have like 1 minute left. So if there is one person who wants to say something for the end, please do. Otherwise, I will be slowly closing the session, or we can still try to answer one of the questions. Okay, Matěj, everything's fine, and we are going to close the session.
To have open one question, because fire it, you know, there's public watching. I'll be happy to give them room.
Yeah, we'll have to do it tomorrow. Time is up, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience, being with us, and see you tomorrow. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Jaká je klíčová role státovského prostředí pro lidi a také pro rozvoj podnikání? Tak to už je pro Miroslava Linharta, partnera v oddělení finančního poradenství Deloitte.
If you look today at where the Czech Republic as a country started more than 30 years ago and where it is today, we will find that we have come a long way. However, much of innovation and progress has been driven by the private sector, and it is high time for the state to join innovation in its functioning through e-government. Real estate and construction sector in general is a good example, as everyone often struggles with the huge administrative burden of a poorly digitalized and interconnected state. In fact, everyone who has been dealing with permitting process of even a family house in recent years knows what I'm talking about. It is therefore extremely important to think about the main users, citizens and entrepreneurs, when forming e-government, as well as the basic goals of this project. User-friendliness. The systems that the state has today lack user-friendliness sometimes. All digital services must be comprehensible without instructions, and at least for basic tasks. Consistency of formats and ideally one point of contact. Not to emphasize on formalism, but the substance of the matter. Consolidation of agendas and data is crucial. The separation of agendas and their low interconnectedness make it impossible to achieve a lean state through digitalization. And last but not least, of course, the chapter for the public sector itself is change management and the possibility of enforcing change and not sticking to the old order. The vision for the whole concept of e-government should be to change the position of the state from an uninterested side to the enabler, which will create a more friendly environment for living and working in the country. To achieve this vision, however, the state must listen to innovators, create imaginary bridges between its institutions and innovators, and think about how to work effectively with the private sector, which is the engine of innovations.
Dámy a pánové, první část konference CzechSetGo je za námi. Díky za vaše postřehy a po krátké pauze nás čeká druhý panel zaměřený tentokrát na roli daňového, legislativního a také regulačního rámce v podpoře inovací a investic do moderních technologií. Moderuje Martin Bohuslav, vedoucí partner Deloitte Legal. Těšte se.
Digitalizace Česka se neobejde bez vaší podpory. Přispějte prosím přes sbírku Česko Digitál libovolnou částkou na projekty, které uspíší inovační a technologický rozmach České republiky. Děkujeme. Digitalizace Česka se neobejde bez vaší podpory. Přispějte prosím přes sbírku Česko Digitál libovolnou částkou na projekty, které uspíší inovační a technologický rozmach České republiky. Děkujeme. Digitalizace Česka se neobejde bez vaší podpory. Přispějte prosím přes sbírku Česko Digitál libovolnou částkou na projekty, které uspíší inovační a technologický rozmach České republiky. Děkujeme. Jste ve správnou dobu na správném místě. Konference CzechSetGo, tentokrát o digitalizaci státu, pokračuje právě teď.
Vítám vás zpět po přestávce. Jak jsem slibovala, začíná druhý panel a ten se zaměří na legislativní, daňový a také regulační rámec podpoře inovací a investic do moderních technologií. Moderuje Martin Bohuslav, vedoucí Deloitte Legal. Pojďme na to.
Role daňového, legislativního a regulačního rámce v podpoře inovací a investic do moderních technologií.
Welcome back to the program of the first conference within the series of CzechSetGo conferences organized by Deloitte Czech Republic. My name is Martin Bohuslav and I'm going to guide you through this part of the conference. Today we are talking about digital state as an innovation and growth enabler. And in this panel 2's discussion, we are going to show some data, we are going to discuss with my guests, and we are going to ask you, the audience, for your opinion about the role of the tax, legislative, regulatory framework as supporting innovation and new technologies. Please enjoy it. And now let me introduce our great guests. First, my guests in our Deloitte virtual studio. I welcome Vladimír Dzurilla, Government CIO, Czech Republic.
Hello, have a nice day.
I welcome Radek Špicar, Vice President of the Confederation of Industry, Czech Republic.
Thanks for the invitation.
Hello. Pavel Doležal, CEO of Kebula, founder of the COVID-19 CZ initiative.
Thanks for having me.
Hello. And our guests online are Sim Sikut, government CIO of Estonia, which Sim will join us later on, but we will have him. Another guest online is Radim Polčák, head of Institute of Law and Technology and vice rector of the Masaryk University.
Thanks for having me.
Another guest is Petr Sedláček, professor of economics, University of Oxford. Welcome.
Morning, thanks for having me.
And we have Matěj Chytil, advisor to the deputy mayor of the capital city of Prague. Hello.
Good morning, Martin, and thank you, everyone.
Gentlemen, welcome here. And now, without fear and hesitation, let's jump into the data that we have, how the Czech Republic stands in competition with others in relation to regulation framework supporting technology, innovation, and digitization. So, the data we have. In comparison to the other countries, considering based on IMD World Digital Competitiveness Ranking for 2020, and considering all the factors, meaning how difficult it is to start a business, how it is possible to enforce contracts, what is the scientific and research regulation and support, what is the regulation of IP rights, what are the immigration laws as essential part how to get the workforce in innovative industry, how the Czech Republic stands. My private message to Pavel Šiška, even in this data, we do not have North Korea, but we have the South one, so we hope that we will cover this issue. But as you can see, we are slightly outbeating Poland, but the rest of the pack is ahead of the Czech Republic. If we put together all these criteria I've just mentioned, and we compare these countries. If we go to the next data set, just taking into consideration starting of business, here as you can see, we are the last one. We are a little bit accompanied by Poland, but the other countries are ahead of the Czech Republic. If we go to the next data, which I hope will be a little bit surprising for you, because here you can see that the Czech Republic stands quite well, because these data are about adoption of strategies and regulations in individual areas. These areas are set by the framework, which is set by the European Commission. It's an e-government strategy framework. And here you can see that we are even numerically, we are in the same position as Estonia, and we are outbeating Ireland. So this brings really a question how this can be, because if we consider the adoption of the regulations, if we consider what laws we have, what areas we have covered, it looks that the Czech Republic is okay. But on the other hand, if I switch to the next data, here we can see what are the obstacles if you are setting up a new business, which, as you can see, just to interpret the data which are in Czech, first one is bureaucracy. The second one is taxation of work. Third one is bureaucracy. Fourth one is bureaucracy. And in that way, we can continue. So these are the obstacles that our respondents saw in setting up a new business in innovative areas. So after this data set, it looks not so very positive for the Czech Republic if we compare the level of what regulations we can adopt, and I would say what the respondents see, and to little exaggerate, I think that the quite shared feeling in the community, in the relevant community, to use the words of Václav Havel, our country is not thriving in this regard. So there is something. Vladimír Dzurilla, what do you think about this? Is it a good interpretation that we are good at adoption of laws, but we have some troubles with implementation and bringing things into life?
I think it's a right approach to look at it as well. Because, for example, the strategies are always active, and if I see the database of strategies, it's really terrifying me, because there are many strategies. And but within the new strategy coming, the last one always forgets to be cancelled. Mm-hmm. So I think we have many strategies, but on the other hand, we have a strategy. We are moving one way, mm-hmm. and then, for example, new government will come. They will. And it happened last year that they were always saying okay, let's just forget what was happening. We will start the new one because we want to do something better and different. what I think is like, and I would start with digitalization, what's the crucial part here about today's discussion. And I think that what happened during this government is that the basic strategies and the legislation, the main legislation in terms of digitalization, was taken by all political parties. So even the new government, the different government, whatever will happen, I think they will stand for what they were voted for. So I think that in terms of digitalization, we can see that probably there will be changes of priorities, definitely, because everyone has a right to change the priority. But I think that the common approach from the strategy, the legislation done, the services to be implemented and all those, this will not change dramatically. And I think that's why we can be much more precise in the adoption of strategies. So I hope that it will change a lot. And for example, the main legislation, what happened about that every citizen has a right for digital services, it will not be doubted anymore. And in a bit more than 3 years, so 3.5 of the year, there is a time for government to implement all the services online. So that's why I hope that it will happen. And in a bit more than 3 years, we will have the whole ecosystem in government, and all services will be digital.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I would like to ask I would like to ask Mr. Polčák. As it was displayed, Czech Republic has adopted many legal norms, and it has covered areas that even the developed countries that should be ahead of us do not have covered. But on the other hand, we do not see so much, I would say, positive outcomes of implementations and digitalization in fact. So for you, as the leading lawyer in the field of technologies, is there a big difference in formal regulations that we have and the practical adoption and implementation we are able to do?
There is such a difference. And another thing is that we do have these areas covered, but then the question is, what is the quality of those rules and regulations? And what Vlado just mentioned, this digital constitution, or this right for digital service, I personally consider it absolutely unnecessary and redundant. And in my view, we did have complex set of laws that allowed for complete digitization of public administration already 15 years ago. And the problem is not really in law, but in activity of institutions and in motivation to implement functional solutions. And here I see the problem. It's not legal, it is more institutional. And the problem, as I see it, is that on the central level, on the level of the government, we have only one institution that is properly and genuinely motivated to make things work. And this institution is Vlado Dzurilla. But it is not any ministry, it is not any public office, and that is the biggest challenge that I see here. It is not in the law, it is not in the substance.
Thank you. Maybe coming, Vlado, back to you. So your opinion on this, because you are our only institution we have for digitalization. So how do you see it? Is it enough to have just you?
No, thank you for that. But of course, it's not about me. It's about the whole. What I would say, I'm responsible for 2 companies now. One is delivering critical infrastructure, and the second one is delivering the shared services and also the communication infrastructure. So that's why we can adopt much more faster than the offices and ministries, because we are also many times everyone compares us to the regular companies, even though we are state companies. So that's why if we want to compete, we have to change as well very fast. And on the other hand, our solutions has to be compatible and comparable to the solutions delivered by all the others. So that's why probably we are moving faster. But on the other hand, we still want to let the ministries and all the offices to be responsible for their services. They've got the legislation, they've got the services, they have to prepare and they have to deliver to the customers. So it means citizens, entrepreneurs, companies, and all those. So we want to help them. That's why we are building the competence center. And we want to be supporting for them. And also Eva was sitting here before, and we did great work together. We did also with Pavel, also Radek. So we are trying to help and to motivate the others. But of course, the responsibility, because of the legislation and because of the competence legislation, they have to do it by themselves as well.
Understand, thank you. But maybe, gentlemen, to you, maybe let's start with you, Radek. Is digitization such an important topic that it would deserve its own ministry? Because for younger audition, there was a ministry of informatics. There was an experiment, I would say. But on the other hand, what is your opinion on this? Should the state express the importance of the topic by establishing something like that?
That could work, but I think we can do it in a different way as well. Well, basically, for us as the Confederation of Industry, the biggest problem was the lack of coordination when it came to digitalization in general a few years ago. And Vlado is basically a product of our lobbying, because at that time we went to, yeah, sure, it was us who put digitalization on the table within tripartita meetings. And we said, this is a must, and you are not doing enough as a government. The biggest problem was that there were too many players playing on their fields without their mutual coordination. You had the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Trade and Industry, etc., etc. And we said, we need one head responsible for digitalization. And at the beginning, we said, you, Prime Minister, will be the one coordinating the whole thing. And the Prime Minister said, no, I cannot do it. So we said, okay. So the realistic scenario is that you have to have a person who will report to you and will be in charge. And that's how this position basically was created many, many years ago. So we are very happy to have him. I'm very happy that he stayed in this position for so long, because I didn't expect it, because there are so many pressures, that I cannot imagine being there for so many years. But it's great to have him. To have an industry, to have a ministry with deputy ministers, its own budget, etc., would be great. But let's be realistic. We don't have it, and I think we can go without it. But we need the Prime Minister who believes in digitalization, who is backing his guy, who's responsible for it. And then, of course, we need cooperation of other ministries, because without it, we would still be missing a lot when it comes to our competition with countries like Estonia, other Scandinavian countries, or even Germany.
No, okay. Maybe just to finish like this institutional round for you, Mr. Doležal, how do you see it? Do we need a ministry for this, or?
I don't care about the ministry for digitalization, honestly. I will come back to my previous, point, and it's the compelling events. Mm-hmm. And, it's great Radek takes credit for Vlado, being here. I would just say, why the fuck it took so long, And if he is the lobbyist for the traditional, industry, and head of the lobbyist for traditional industry, why did it take you 30 years? And that's our issue. Governments and politicians are only, in the parenthesis, doing what people want, right? That's why we elect them. That's why they should listen to us. People form companies to represent their, their business interest. If you take those two things together, we really need to be better at expressing to governments and politicians what we want. You could hear in the last post, Jan, right? He was like, I don't care about visions. We had enough visions. I care about surviving. That's the compelling event. So the old industry has finally moved and started to press the government. We need, new industries, to kind of join that lobbying function together with municipalities and people and press the government. However, it is then translated into action if it's new ministry, or Vlado takes one more company and doesn't sleep at all. They already have minister who doesn't sleep because he has two ministers, right, or three, whatever. But so that's just how it represents. We need to be pushing more together. And, one thing we've seen last 12 months is we need to open the data. There should be we need to open benchmark. Once we open data about COVID, it took us 3 months to lobby for that, everyone. Then suddenly everybody could use the data. We should open the data about EET. So everybody could actually work on that. A new economy, virtual, can be on top of it. The important thing, though, this should lead to change of attitude for the governmental, clerks. Estonia had a very good, example of customs, because they think as servants, to the people. Our bureaucracy doesn't, think like that. Just think about now, my wife is an accountant, my mom is a tax auditor. Now every single Friday after 4 o'clock, when the clerks at the financial, Úřad go home, before they go, they just because they can through digital, they just push 5 controls there. So now our Saturday mornings are spent, doing just the reconfirmation that everything is okay. That's not the service attitude. That's the attitude,
Okay. Thanks for that. Maybe it will be interesting to ask for the Estonian experience in that regard. What is the magic? Simply because, to be honest, this is not a conference about saying it would be great, but
how to do it.
We are there for many years and how to do it. And maybe the institutional question in the Czech Republic is not so minor, I would say, even in view of the fact how the governments are set up and stuff like that. So completely understand your view, but to get somewhere, we need to make the magic, maybe how it was done in Estonia or anywhere else. And I'm afraid it will include the institutional part as well.
But my point is just, we are already, that's just the implementation. And as I said, the election is coming, and we have at least 2 parties who are very digital pro. So it will happen somehow if we keep pushing. Radek keeps pushing, we keep pushing from technology perspective, and Matěj and the municipalities and people.
Yeah, great, thank you. If you won't mind, I would like to move a little bit the way of taxes and economics. I would like to ask in online Mr. Sedláček. And my question would be to you, what measures, legal and fiscal, you as an economist, from your point of view, you consider as the most important to move the economy the way of innovation and the way of digitization?
Thanks again for having me. It's a great pleasure. I have to admit I'm no expert on the particular institutional setting in the Czech Republic. It's been a long time since I worked there. But my research is about the importance of startups and how they matter for the rest of the economy. And what is evident from the data that some of these countries have available is that making life easier for startups helps them grow. It sounds very obvious, but actually finding the data to support that isn't that easy. So one of the key pieces of evidence that we found is actually a reform in Portugal, and Portugal is one of the countries where they are very happy to collect and then distribute data to other people, including researchers. And they had a big reform in 2005 on how to do business registrations. The World Bank has a fun little ranking of how to do business, and one of the subcomponents is a index of the difficulties of starting a business. I had a quick look at that yesterday, and the best country is New Zealand, and unfortunately the Czech Republic ranks, I think, at 130th or 140th position. And one of the key problems is the amount of time that it takes to start a business. While in New Zealand it's about half a day, in the Czech Republic it's on average a month. And here the last thing I'd like to bring up, maybe rebel a little bit. I know that the whole conference is about digitization. I guess the point I would like to make is that digitalization isn't actually the goal. It's just the means to a goal, and that goal should be promoting entrepreneurship or making life easier for businesses and individuals. If the government simply scans all the forms and makes everything available on the internet, but it still takes 20 forms to fill in and a month to wait to get the confirmations back, it's not clear that creating an e-government is actually going to change much.
Can I have a question?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Why is it, in your opinion, in your data, such a decisive factor? Because, I've started several companies over the last 20 years, and usually you just do it once. And usually just hire someone to do it for you. So honestly, yeah, starting a company in Poland 20 years ago was a hassle. Honestly, starting something in UK was a hassle 4 years ago because we didn't have a bank account. But starting something here, yeah, it has improved so dramatically. I don't care. I call a lawyer and he does it in 2 days and I go on. So everybody keeps repeating, starting a new business. I just never seen it, Ondřej Bartoš, a famous Czech investor says, businesses just, they do it. When they want it, they do it. I see other factors being big, but starting the business, yeah, there is a cap. Once you cross that cap, everything additional seems not. So can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm sorry, Matěj. But...
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Sure. No, I think that's a great point. So the type of data that we're looking at is entire economies, not individual. So we have firm level data, but we can't, of course, we don't know who those entrepreneurs are. But the key point is that it seems that there's huge failure in startups, and one of the main points is to make the pain from failing smaller. Right, so allow people to fail, and that's how they learn, and that's how businesses figure out what they actually might be good at. I think lowering the costs of making that initial step will broaden the base in which from which the pool of entrepreneurs can be pulled, and that potentially has that has potential to then increase the number of high growth productive companies.
Is it a causality or is it just a correlation? Because like you quote Portugal, it went through a pretty rough time, so they had pretty big compelling event, and big to start something. So more people were willing to start something. And you represent that as a causality. So I'm just curious. Maybe it's out of the scope of this discussion, but
no, but discussion is always valuable. So thank you.
May I join this discussion?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's go on.
I totally agree. It's not a problem to set up a company. I did it once 4 years ago, took a few days. I'm doing it right now as we sit here. I'm setting up a new company. It will take a few days. It's not a problem at all. What's problematic is to hire people, because this job market is totally exhausted. So that's a problem number one. Secondly, it's difficult to get a construction permit if you want to build something. And thirdly, indirect cost of labor is too high. These are the problems that the startups, small and medium-sized companies, or even big companies face, not the setup of business that's fast and easy and cheap.
Yeah, understood. Maybe I'm sorry just to disrupt this topic a little bit, because I have information that we have Mr. Sikut from Estonia, CIO of Estonian government. So welcome here.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, we are happy to have you. And I would like to just use this opportunity because, in fact, we are now discussing in the Czech Republic how to make it. And one of the topics before you joined was that how to make the miracle that the government, the public service, is interested and is enthusiastic about implementing and bringing digitalization and these changes into life. Because we are discussing here that even in the Czech Republic, it could be a question of institutions, like to have, like a sole ministry for the digitalization and these topics or not. And the other idea was that this is simply about some enthusiasm, that the people want to do it and want to change the things. But in the Czech Republic, there is a question whether people are ready for this. So I just wanted to ask, in Estonia, what do you consider the magic that simply brought the public service, the government, to think this way and to implement new solutions?
Yeah, well, it's a mix of things always, isn't it? And I just want to say here that in our experience, digital transformation or going digital is no different than any other transformation, any other change management that we do. It takes leadership. It takes proper sort of managing of the process. It takes basically that somebody's sort of steady at it. This is the organization. This is the governance. These are the mechanisms you have been talking about. If there's a government CIO or not. This takes some skilling. I mean, it's a classical thing. It's basically just taking the ABC of how to do change and just doing it in the context of digital government in a way. My other point is that what made Estonian case fast, and this is where I think exactly you can comment from Czechia. We have always had a burning platform, small, poor back in the day. We need to be very effective and efficient how we do things. That's why we started. That's why we started experimenting with tech. And as it worked, it then became a conscious effort, and the concept of change management from there. So if I'm very helicopter view, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe, gentlemen, any comments on your part, like in view of the previous discussion?
So yeah, I think it's confirming, like that we in Czech Republic, Czech, Bohemia, we've always had it good enough. We didn't have any compelling elements. Estonia has faced, so many, hard things after, the revolution, here, and they are surrounded by everywhere, it's been saying, right? So they always had to be scrappy and hustling, to do things. We inherited, traditional industry, Radek and his, club, right? Yeah. Which was great for a while, but it didn't, force us to change fast enough. Yeah. And now we kind of bump into, the ground, and Škoda has to face, software companies learning how to do cars. That's exact word Martin used. They have Tesla, they have Google, they have Apple as their competitors. So now we have to do something. Mm-hmm. So, it takes crisis to align people to do something that change.
Because we have the other countries, that's the competition, I would say. Yeah.
One example to confirm this, I met a guy who was responsible for the Bilbao effect. We all know the Bilbao case, the whole transformation of the area of the city with Guggenheim Museum at the end. And I asked him, you needed cooperation of so many actors. The government, the regional government, municipal government, the people, the companies, everybody. How the hell did you put it together? And he said, Radek, there's only one answer. And the answer is very simple, 20% unemployment. Yeah, they faced 20% unemployment. Yeah. They had to work together.
Poland, we were talking about Poland. Poland was like, I had a business 10 years ago in Katowice. It was 25% unemployment rate. Everybody wanted to change.
We are victims of our own success. That's the problem.
If I just can add, for example, when you said about the government, about the regions and all of those, you can see the vaccination as well. Mm-hmm. This is something what is happening on all the sides. Levels, so, for example, all the levels of the government, the whole government, then the municipalities and everyone is cooperating all together because of the crisis as well. Yeah. So that's why the
pandemic pushed them to work together. Yeah.
The only aim is to vaccinate the people.
Gentlemen, I fully understand your points, but on the other hand, this is like a regulatory panel. So shall we regulate the crisis, or shall we adopt a law that there is a crisis that we will face in a few years?
Artificial crisis.
Yeah, let's make it. Codify it.
Can I just add to the crisis, for example, what Pavel said also, it's very important that now we can see that people care a lot. So if something is happening with the systems of the government, it's written everywhere, and it's good that it's written. Mm-hmm. Because now every politician and everyone is thinking, oh, this is something what people really cares about. Can you imagine a few years ago, it was nothing about that. Mm-hmm. So now people are expecting to get digital services. Then if it's not working, then the government also can see that it's a crisis, let's say. So we have to do that. We have to do something with that.
And to the point from Bruno, I think we have all. I'm no expert in law. I just see it from practice. The only law that I'm missing is the one Vlada was talking about how we can actually anonymize the data, from EET, and kind of open it up.
Work with
So we can build another layer, the virtual data layer on top of the economy. That's where the world is going. As I said again, Apple is virtualizing the world. Dinantic is doing the same. Every single square inch of the world will have its own IP address in 2 months. So that's the world we are, going to, not,
Fully understand. On the other hand, coming back the way. So it is a legal question which is solved by politics, and the politics are driven by the opinion of the public. And question really is whether this is the motivation we have at the moment here, whether the public understands that digitalization is top one, top
Absolutely.
two.
Well, it took us 30 years to realize it as a traditional industry, but now it's here because, as Martin said, we are facing Tesla. And it's either us making the right software, or it's them learning how to produce quality cars. And if we don't learn it fast enough, we are done.
They've learned it already.
Okay, they've learned it already.
Microns, not millimeters.
Good. And the same for the people. And I'm sorry to use this example, Vlado will not like it, but me queuing for 2 hours for the prolongation of driving license during the pandemic, where we were not supposed to meet other people, was a horrible experience. And not only for me, but for another 800,000 people
But that's
whose
not the law
driving
thing,
licenses, ran out of.
That's implementation, not the law. To your point, right?
I'm talking about the pressure from the people.
Yeah.
So the pressure from the companies is here because of the competitiveness pressures, and the pressure from the public is here because we don't want to wait in a line for 2 hours for a prolongation of driving license during the pandemic when we are not supposed to meet other people.
And I would say, like, the point from Radek is right, because I was just showing on the data that the legislation maybe is not the problem. Yeah, we have it. Yeah, but the implementation, the rows.
In this case, we don't have the legislation.
In this particular case, it is a problem of legislation because it's written. You have to go there.
Yeah.
You have to ask for your driving license, and then you have to go there again.
Exactly.
And you will get the driving license. It is going to be changed from 1st of June.
Wow.
Great. Okay, we will have like
Service is ready.
It is ready.
Good.
Okay. We will ask then the audience whether they want to see as the obstacles, and one of them is maybe the education of the people working, in the offices, in the bureaus, because question is like, again, the adoption by the public service will be really critical. So whether the people, the workers there, are ready to work with new technologies. And
I don't actually think it totally matters. It matters if people are asking for it. If enough people are asking for it, we have a Digitální tu schránku, digital box, right, data box.
Yeah.
How many people use it?
Roughly around 1 million.
Yeah, only. And now we have a banking identity. So once we actually start using it, and we all got comfortable using digital things during the pandemic, like food delivery, etc., we will force the officers to actually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to add, and probably also the guys there would like to add something, but I just wanted to add one thing, that sometimes the government needs to be also a little bit like forcing. For example, in Denmark, it happened. We were faster with data box than Denmark, for example, but they were not afraid to say, "We will give it to you. You have to use, or you can use it, and if you don't want to use it, you just step out of the system." 91% of the people stays there, and they were using it, and they were very happy.
Opt-out way.
Yeah.
And so why didn't you do it, Rado? Not you, but the current government.
Because they just said, "Yeah, we are going to show people that it's a good way of using it," but it was not happening. And when I asked the guys from Denmark what they think, how would end up the story if they were just trying to get the people to use the data box, they said around 30 up to 40% they think the final count would be, but they are now on 91%. 2014.
Yeah, great. Understood. Maybe just to ask Mr. Chytil as well, because I think that the metropoles often play a role how to attract people to establish new businesses, innovative businesses in the metropolitan region. Definitely the Prague region plays a role in the Czech Republic. I think we can name other cities as well. I think Brno attracts talents, Ostrava as well. But you, as close person to Prague, how do you see the position of municipalities to support, startup culture and establishment of new innovative businesses?
Thank you, Martin, for the question. A lot has been said already in the studio, so I'll try to answer your question, and then I'll try to propose 3 compelling cases of how digitalization can look like in not only in our country. First, let me stress out what Radim Polčák said at the beginning. We often overemphasize the role of new legislation, and we don't put enough stress and enough focus on the importance of institutional capacity building in the country, organizational cultures, and impact that public institutions in general, not only government, can have. And I'm very happy that this was mentioned right at the beginning, and it helped to shape our debate. To your question, all larger cities, maybe even towns in the developed world, seek to attract businesses, and because digitalization is the buzzword of the day, we all, to some degree, are trying to do that. This is where I would like to stress out the role of expectations management, right? As you see, and I think I mentioned it earlier, the path to prosperity is often happening in clusters. Those clusters are often, for good reasons, born out of capital cities. I can expand on that. I hope I won't get fired for saying this, but I believe in the Czech Republic, it's not not all the cities should strive to attract the same type of business or entrepreneurship or growth. So Prague is lucky enough to have the Prague AI project. We are also lucky to have the EU's space agency in Prague. This is also already a fertile ground for a cluster. I also believe that Brno is doing an extremely good job, and I hope Pavel can either confirm or correct me here. But the startup culture in Brno is already expanding, and I don't think we all have to compete in the same space. And now the three cases or the three images of digitalization, and there can be let's say to shape the way we think about it. My esteemed colleagues in the studio already mentioned the driving license. So let's start there, right? So for 17 years we've been using the digitally printed driving license, and that was so the first image is the emerging digitalization. That is, Radek has to go and chemically process his own picture, right? Snapshot, then fill in the form in handwriting, go to the office, we scan everything, we type his name and surname in the computer and pop. In 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, he can come back and have his digitally issued ID. So this is the emerging digitalization, and I'm sure we're already behind this. It's been 3 years already that you don't need paperwork when you're asking for when you're going to get your driver's license, and you have already your digital image, either taken by a digital camera by any office in the country, or they are already able to find your photo in the register, right? So that would be what you could call the baseline of digitalization, and that's where we probably headed in many areas. But maybe the advanced digitalization is to rethink how you approach the services government provides, and that is where, in this case, we're probably headed already. And that is, you don't need a driver's license, you don't need it issued, you don't need it, shipped to your doorstep. Maybe you just don't need it, because the state already knows that you pass the exams and that you have the permit. So why do you need the card? And I believe that we need to build institutional capacity within public service to actually think outside the box like this, and not to only think about how we use digitalization to deliver faster and more efficient services we're delivering right now, but how to rethink them entirely. Because if the businesses are facing this type of competition, I think the governments are as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for these thoughts. And now maybe I have one more question about how to support simply, the appetite for development of the startups and innovation companies. But I think now maybe it would be much better to give the opportunity to the audience to have a poll about our question. And because I will now switch to the Czech. Sorry for doing this, and sorry for the people online. But to explain the question, I will do it in Czech, and then we will vote, and then we will be able to discuss the results of the poll. So, OK, takže jak jsem varoval, jdeme do. Doufám, že se nám během chvíle objeví otázka, kterou pokládáme. Takže pro diváky. Co je podle vás největší překážkou rychlejší a efektivnější digitalizace veřejné správy v České republice? Je to chybějící ústřední orgán pro digitalizaci s vlastními experty a rozpočtem, jako číslo 1. Varianta 2. Nedostatečné personální zajištění, tedy nedostatek IT odborníků k provedení rychlejší digitalizace. Možnost 3. Nezodpovědný přístup k IT zakázkám. myšleno veřejným zakázkám. Nehospodárnost, neúčelnost, vznikající vendor locky na straně orgánů veřejné správy a veřejných zadavatelů. Čtvrtá možnost, nízká informovanost veřejnosti a její zapojení, tedy něco, co jsme zde diskutovali, a sice malá poptávka po tom, aby věci byly digitální, aby fungovaly. Varianta 5 je něco jiného, protože rozhodně si nemyslíme, že jsme geniální v tom ohledu, abychom našli ty hlavní důvody, hlavní problémy. Takže poprosím vás, vy, kteří nás sledujete na Zoomu, tak máte určitě možnost zaslat otázku do chatu. Vy, kteří nás sledujete jiným způsobem, tak určitě využijte komunikační e-mail připojený ke konferenci. Hlasování vidíte, že běží odpočet, takže máme ještě nějakých 18 vteřin, abyste svoji volbu provedli. Zopakuji, chybějící ústřední orgán, nedostatečné personální zajištění, tedy nedostatek IT odborníků, nezodpovědný přístup k IT zakázkám, aby bylo možné vysoutěžit digitální řešení, nízká informovanost veřejnosti a její zapojení, anebo něco jiného, nám prosím komunikujte zvláště. Takže tímto je hlasování ukončeno. Doufám, že jste si zvládli zvolit některou z možností. Nyní chvíli počkáme, než nám naběhnou výsledky. Určitě budeme rádi i za zpětnou vazbu v rámci otázky 5, abyste nám nahodili další témata, která považujete za klíčovou překážku. Takže pokud mám správnou informaci, výsledky máme. Ve srovnání s předchozím panelem, kde volba byla jasná, všichni jste si vybrali, že nejdůležitější pro založení nového biznesu je právní a daňové prostředí, za což jako právník děkuji. Nicméně v tomto hlasování máme rozložení jiné. Máme to poměrně zajímavým způsobem rozloženo mezi možnost 1 a 4. To znamená, chybí nám podle vás ústřední orgán státní správy pro digitalizaci s vlastním rozpočtem, s vlastními experty. Zároveň vnímáte jako poměrně zásadní problém nezodpovědný přístup k IT veřejným zakázkám. Třetí varianta z hlediska počtu hlasů, nedostatečné personální zajištění, tedy nedostatek IT odborníků, a jako nejméně důležitou, pokud pomineme otevřenou otázku 5, tak vidíte nízkou informovanost veřejnosti a její zapojení. Děkuji vám moc za hlasování a nyní si dovolím přepnout zpátky do diskuze a budeme pokračovat v angličtině. Děkuji. So, gentlemen, you have seen the results. I think some of the results are a little bit going against the results of our discussion here. Exactly. So that's the question, of course, how to address this, how to face it. So how do you interpret them? Maybe I will, like the first one, I would like to ask Mr. Polchak online. What it comes to you from the results? What do you see there? I'm sorry, we cannot hear you. Maybe you are muted. You are not. Yeah.
I'm speaking.
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah, now.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, but this is how we started, and it's not primarily the institution problem. It doesn't matter whether it should be a ministry or it should be like 15 departments and 15 different offices of state. But it is more about motivation. If there is some institution that is genuinely motivated to get it done, then it can work. And we have many examples. You gave them at municipalities. There are IT projects working, but these projects are particular. Or my example here from Brno would be Supreme Administrative Court. And there the head of the court decided that there is a need for an efficient IT system, and it was developed, and it was not expensive, it was efficient, it is working, there is no lock-in, so it is all about motivation. And the institutional issue goes after this motivation. So if we have an institutional framework that would provide for this genuine motivation to get things done and to have them done efficiently, then it can work. And I think that this is the answer from the poll.
Great. And maybe a little additional question. What do you think about the result, about the public tenders?
That's a big issue, although what we have here are still the burdens that were created, especially in the 1990s. So nowadays, I'm quite optimistic about how the public procurement goes, but the problem is that we have so many of these old burdens and of these old lock-ins that it created a kind of tradition that we are still having, and we still have to deal with it. And we are creating rules and legal rules that are sometimes extremely restrictive, and they make it very difficult to conduct a proper public procurement. And this is because we have this experience of this terribly inefficient public procurement that was done before. If in the 1990s more people would end up in jail immediately, we would not need that many laws and those burdensome procedures that we have now. But this is the history that we have to live with.
Yeah, so I understand like the another 20 amendments of the Public Procurement Act is not the solution. So maybe, gentlemen, who of you would like to react to this lawyer's view?
I have a fresh experience, with this. I totally agree with that. We've never worked with the government before. Last year, and we started an initiative trying to help, with the IT systems where we saw there was not enough capacity, and it's what we've learned, in those 3-4 months is that there's so many people in government that actually want to do something, but that like a lot of those legislative frameworks, they actually prohibit them. So everybody's kind of like, like people in governmental services are motivated not to do anything wrong, not to do something right. And like the law procedures is a big part of that. So it's very hard to start for some company to work with government, like very, very hard.
I would just add about the, thank you. I would just add about the institution. I think if I'm like leading the ministry or leading the office, it's my responsibility to say, for example, I want to have it all digital. And you can find few of those offices, you can find few of those like ministries when they are like moving this way and they are moving this like really fast because the decision was taken and not about the Ministry of Informatics or Ministry of Transformation or whatever. It's just the decision of the head of the ministry, and they are saying, and they can say, for example, the second thing, we are not going to scan, we just want every process to be digital. This is just another decision of the of top guys in the ministry. So I do not think that just one institution can change something. Of course, for example, now under Ministry of Interior, they are responsible for the whole of the government, let's say, for the shared services and all those. And it's like we are delivering. You cannot say, for example, that we do not have a data box, identity, that we do not have basic registers, that we do not have a layer for data or whatever. But now it's under responsibility of every ministry, like to fulfill their duties, let's say, fulfill their duties to the citizens.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe before like next Czech comments, I would say maybe Radek will have something to add to this, but I would like to use the chance we have Simsikut here, and just to interpret for you the results of the poll. The major problems the audience sees is like the absence of one authority covering the digitalization, like of course from the prepared choices. So this is the one, and the other one is like troubles with public tenders. In fact, like it is too formalistic, and it is like slowing down new solutions. In fact, even as it was said, there is a will on the part of the public service of the government, but the rules are maybe too strict to go that way. What is your experience in Estonia?
Well, the poll results are the same as you would ask in Estonia these days. So in a way, it's a constant debate is my point. I think if I can just offer like a side perspective for a second, right? Then obviously we know with Vlado from before, and so from the way we have been seeing from the sidelines, there's many things that exactly have been put in place in the last years in Czech Republic as well. So there's been quite great movement. You can't have stuff overnight. So that's my context of saying that, look, I mean, certainly some things seem to be moving, at least if you look from outside, but you always have to be hungry. And I quite take that. That's why I say that, Estonian poll would be very similar. We also have had this constant debate, what's the right governance mechanism? Is it bottom up? Is it top down? We have been now trying to build a hybrid where basically we try to see, okay, how every agency is a digital agency in their domain, doing the transformation of their services, rethinking the business models there, just like Maciej was talking about. At the same time, somebody needs to steer all of that, because if everybody's doing something, they all run in different directions. So if you want to move to something like a complete new level as a whole of government, make services happen proactively, or use AI, whatever like that, then somebody needs to steer this. So that's the top-down stuff. That's the some sort of central competence and authority that needs to come to the game. So it's, I would say, there's no one model, only bottom-up or top-down. It has to always be a combination, because the problem is if you just do central stuff, you will only have such much of a bandwidth. You know, there's only a pipeline that, you know, so thin that everything goes through. You want to unleash stuff. But at the same time, yes, coordination, some sort of push. Sometimes somebody needs to give somebody exactly a kick in the butt. That's the stuff that needs to be in top down as well. And I still say every country in the world is trying to define this. Every country is struggling with it. The solution will be a bit different, but I fundamentally believe it always has to be a combination.
Okay.
If it helps.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so maybe your reaction, because like...
Can I ask?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
Sim, I just wanted to ask, and for example, about the government and about the parliament. For example, the opposition party, are they also like trying to help the ruling parties, the government, to change the legislation in terms of making the digital transformation better? Is it something, because the legislation, we are not talking only about the implementation part, of course, and about the business models. We are talking about the changing of legislation, which is happening in Parliament. And we can all, like here, we can all, like most of the time, we can hear that the government is not doing it the right way. But for example, the legislation is changing somewhere else. So whether there is a cooperation in Estonia or this is also something similar.
It's an interesting question. Well, I think that it's also in our case that the job of opposition, as they see it, is to obstruct everything, right? And to oppose everything. But at the same time, if I look at into the history of legal changes being made and all the bigger legal reforms we have had that have pushed and helped digitalization have been very widely accepted. So there also has been support or at least no counteractions from the opposition side. And I cannot say it has been somehow politically curated. Right, but I think in our case we might be different from you. In our case, it's very hard for politicians to like say that we should not be digital, because everybody has seen and felt the effects already as citizens. Their voters, I mean, they themselves. Like you know, for us, there's no going back to non-digital anymore because of that. For us, the debate is rather how fast do we run ahead? What's the ambition, right? And that's a different story. So I don't know if I'm answering you, Vlada, but my point being that we, in our case, we can't say that we rely on, like, we from opposition help really that much. I'm not political myself, but just as a comment. But at the same time, there's also no counter work.
Yeah.
And that's because everybody has felt benefit.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, yeah, on the basics, of course, it was like very, very nice to see that political parties like wait for the critical legislation here, and it was like super to see, and they were also like very productive, very like supporting everything and working on that as well. But for example, we are talking about the like partial transformation. This is what I mean, that they can like go into the legislation every time. And not only about the really important like covering legislation, but for example, when we were discussing your driving license, this is something when, for example, I think that in Parliament it can happen. Mm-hmm. It's not only about the Ministry of Transformation. It's that political party can sit, say, and they will prepare the ground for changes. Mm-hmm. So this is what I think is sometimes missing. That of course the cover legislation, wonderful. The cooperation was great, and everyone is happy for that because the like companies were helping, they were helping, like almost everybody. They saw that this is something what can make a huge impact and change. But what I'm missing is that in Parliament it's happening just small changes and preparing the ground for the changes as well, for the implementation changes.
Well, maybe they are solving bad things in Parliament. Maybe they should be thinking more about what the current children, which will become their voters in 10 years, will actually want the world to look like. Maybe they are too busy fighting each other. Maybe they should really look what's in the future. And to Martin's point, who is hunting us down? You know, Tesla, Apple, Poland, Estonia, Russia.
Yeah, definitely. The political cycle is maybe preventing these long-term visions. Yeah, but that's something definitely. One of the results is that there needs to be the sense of necessity in relation to digitization. So we will carry this on.
Martin, maybe Prague is a good example. Mm-hmm. You know, like what Matěj and the guys from Golemio are doing. They're not just doing things. They created their own event, which is connecting, you know, cities from around the world, talking about how to digitize, right? How to go in the future. And I think maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't seen any kind of like initiatives like this, you know, on the parliament and cross-parting, you know, like sessions. So it's not only about we wait, it's going to happen, or somebody has to push out. There has to be proactive approach and connecting people with the wider audience abroad, like Deloitte is doing today with other countries, right?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Maybe to ask Matěj Chytil about this, like how do you see the results of the poll and what this says to you?
Again, even in this case, it's hard for me to comment on the poll because I might differ there a bit. Back to what Pavel said, I personally can take no credit for what my colleagues are doing with the Golemia platform. But what I can say, I can easily explain why this is maybe happening on a level of quality you would expect. And that is because we were fortunate with the capacity of people that are willing to work for the municipal government over a long period of time. And once you have this capacity that was first built in the Prague Institute of Urban Planning, and then they moved some of the capacity to the municipal company, you can actually see those people overcoming the legislative debate and just finding new solutions and new tools to rethink and then deliver the public services. And this brings me back to your debate on the driver's licenses, right? So yes, you can say, we can all say that the law is very strict here. So the license is only issued to the person who obtained the legal permission, and it's only the municipal agency to issue the license. I don't know, I hope Radim Polčák will correct me here, but I don't see the law, preventing the municipal agency to deliver the driving license to Radek Špicar in person. It's I might be wrong here, but I don't think that's the case. I just don't think we had the chance to think about that way, because the problem is there is no competition, right? So we don't have the KPIs you guys in the business have. So you always have to come when the government provides the service. The case is usually there is no competition, and the incentives for the public servants are misaligned with many of the interests of the citizen. And my job, for instance, is to try to realign those incentives so that people who work within public institutions and the organizational cultures they create that actually help to deliver what you as a citizen.
Which is actually not quite correct, right? Because you yourself said that you as Prague are competing for talent and companies with Brno and other clusters, right? And we as a country and as Europe are competing with others. So there is competition.
No.
The politicians don't see it.
No. That's an important thing here. I think we're on the same page, but it's a very important thing to clear up. So Prague, as a corporation of 1.4 million people, definitely is in competition with other cities. Mm-hmm. But me, as a public servant, I'll keep my job even if we lose the battle.
That's the connection, objectives and connecting. Yeah.
Exactly. So Prague is a budget of 74 billion crowns, right? Mm-hmm. So if Prague is gradually losing in the competition of other cities or metropolis or clusters in the world, yeah, I'll be fine in my job, and most of the heads of the department will be as well. But I think I would suggest that if you are doing your job badly, then your company will be out of business quite soon. Yep. And so that is a huge difference. And what we want to do is to create a culture in the public sector that bridges this gap. Because I think some of you mentioned it already. What are my incentives? Imagine I was the head of the transport department, right, that issues those licenses. What would be my incentive to take a risk, and go on a thin legal line and try to deliver those licenses to you by courier? Where's this authority what is my incentive in that? I'm incentivized in the public sector to stay low. And you as a startup businessman, you're actually incentivized to push high. Because if you don't push high, you're out of business.
But see, that's what Estonia got right. You know, to your point, you know, like you said, stay hungry, right, in Estonia. So the question is, how did you change that mindset?
That's the question. Yeah. How to provoke this? Yeah. Maybe, sorry, gentlemen, just like taking the word back because I would like to. We are like a little bit approaching the end of the panel, and I would like to spend few last minutes on how to incentivize in such a situation that we just discussed here. You know, the businesses to come to the Czech Republic, to invent here, to be even established by Czechs. Yeah. Because like. For example, if we take one example, we have, for example, research and development support in the tax area, meaning like you can deduct something or you can get some incentive even. And I would like to ask Radek about like his opinion in this regard, because in fact the system is like that you simply give the amount of money to the whole economy without any, any differentiation, without even like picking things out of what should be subventioned, what not. Yeah. And that's one point. Another point is, for example, in the Czech Republic, you can deduct like 100% of the costs. I think in Lithuania it's 300%. Yeah? So like even from like the number of the support, it's lower compared to the other countries. Yeah? And it's maybe one of the major tools we have here. Yeah? Radek, what do you think about this? Is it like properly set, or does it need some boost?
Going back to the first slide that you showed, it's properly set. And I say that because it's me and Martin Jan who implemented it into our legislation. That's why I'm saying it's properly set. But where is our problem? We have it as a part of our legislation. It's great to have it. It helps to boost private investment into R&D. It's important even for investors. They ask about it, whether we have it. We say, yes, we have it since 2002, I guess, something like that, when we were in the government. But where's the problem? The problem is financial officers working under the Ministry of Finance, who, as we learned a few years ago, were they got incentives. The officers at the financial office were receiving incentives not to provide private companies with this tax deductible for research and development. See, they were not motivated and supported to check whether that particular R&D project is good, whether it's real innovation, etc. They were incentivized not to provide it to private companies. So that's the problem. It's not the lack of legislation. We have the legislation. It's the problem with attitude and with politicians.
Isn't it a problem with the justice system if somebody is de-incentivizing on purpose, so it's kind of preventing them?
I can comment on this because this is like our job. Yeah, so
it's your job.
At the court, we win.
Okay,
it takes years.
Yeah, so it's a great business for Deloitte because you are helping companies, to fight the financial officers. Yeah. But the financial officers, instead of helping to boost our competitiveness, are doing this evil job, making it much more complicated for private investors to invest into R&D. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Culture, attitude of civil servants, and the pressure in the right direction from the side of politicians.
Yeah. So, in fact, like the setup is not working very well. Like the basic setup is okay, but
absolutely, legislation is there, but implementation,
environment
is a different story.
Okay. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I think we are quite approaching the end of the session, but I would like to take the privilege to ask each of you, like, for one recommendation, what do you see in this, like, let's say, regulatory tax, legal environment? What do you see the Czech Republic should do, really quickly?
Enforce the law.
Enforce the law.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Enforce the law.
If somebody screws me up, I want to be, done at the court within 1 week, right?
Okay, Radek, you next.
Stay hungry and press the government. We as citizens and we as companies.
Okay.
I would say the same. I wanted to say, and now I'm thinking whether there is something else. But I think for example, if you check the priorities, for example, what the citizens have, and I do not think, for example, that maybe in 5 priorities you would see, like in the whole population, you would not see digitalization. Yeah. And I think this has to change. The digitalization and then the convenience it can bring will be it will be something what is so common that it's not there, but on the other hand, it's on the top.
Great. Thank you very much. Gentlemen online, Maybe I will start with Mr. Polčák. What is your opinion? The one thing we need to do quickly.
This is very difficult. I'm used to deliver lectures of 90 minutes at least. But if I would sum up, I would say the key is in lobbying, because there is a lot of lobbying in this area, and the government should listen to the users, and it's the business users and it's the public, and the government should listen less to the IT part of Czech business sector that has strong interests in delivering to the state. That is, I think, the key for some development in
Thank you very much. Mr. Sedláček, please, one sentence.
So I'll just touch on what was already said in terms of convenience and maybe link it to the R&D subsidies, which I've been working on for the European Commission as well. There, one of the issues is that they often get eaten up by the larger companies because they are the ones that can afford, the help of firms like Deloitte to get them access to those companies. So making it convenient, making it easy for businesses to apply for things like R&D subsidies will also hopefully increase the efficiency with which they get distributed.
Thank you very much. Matěj Chytil, please, really one sentence. What we need to do quickly.
Empower the public service to think outside the box.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Sim, you are not last but not least. What do you recommend? The one thing we should do in the regulatory area?
I want to echo what others have said on the incentives. In the end, everything comes down to incentives and the culture and skills behind.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I would like to thank you all. Very quickly, Vladimír Dzurilla, thank you for being with us. Radek Špicar, thank you, Radek. Pavel Doležal, thank you very much. And gentlemen in online, Sim Sikut, thank you very much. Radim Polčák, thank you. Petr Sedláček, thank you very much. And Matěj Chytil, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Martin Bohuslav. This was the panel about regulation, tax and legislation. Stay tuned. As you have heard, we have to put digitalization to the spotlight. So this is our work. Follow the CzechSetGo conferences. This is the way how to do it. Thank you.
A lehce zákeřnou otázku jsem si připravil Adama Hafouda, vedoucího partnera v daňovém a právním oddělení Deloitte. Jaká je vlastně úroveň digitalizace v Česku? Adame, tak jak jsme na tom?
Inovační prostředí a obecně prostředí pro startupy v České republice bych řekl, že je hodně podobné obecně pro všechny podnikatele. To znamená, že pro startupy dneska není nic specificky daného, ať už v daňovém nebo v právním prostředí. Existuje několik různých platform, které startupy podporují a myslím, že to dělají dobře, ale pokud chceme startupy skutečně podpořit, a oni jsou jeden z pilířů inovační strategie České republiky, tak se musíme zamyslet nad tím, co pro to můžeme systematicky udělat. Myslím si, že jedna z klíčových věcí je, aby stát vedl dialog se startupy, aby chápal, jaké jsou jejich potřeby a aby potom implementoval cílená opatření, které startupy budou podporovat. Co se týče obecně inovačního prostředí, tak tam si myslím, že už řada cílených opatření byla implementována v daňovém a právním prostředí. Nicméně, upřímně řečeno, co se týče inovace, soupeříme nebo máme konkurenci na vlastně mezinárodním trhu, máme konkurenci ostatních států a v rámci té konkurence nemůžu říct, že Česká republika dneska nějakým způsobem vyniká. Takže co se inovačního prostředí týče, tak tam si obecně myslím, že bychom se měli více soustředit více inspirovat zahraničí, v některých opatřeních jít třeba dál, než jdeme dneska, abychom skutečně uspěli v té konkurenci, která je velmi intenzivní. Řada českých podniků, součástí nadnárodních koncernů, soutěží o to, aby určité inovační projekty byly umístěny právě v České republice a měli bychom je v tomto směru více podpořit, než to, co současný legislativní a právní rámec nabízí. Co se týče toho, co by v daňové a právní sféře mohlo být, řekněme, trošku lepší, myslím si, že to jsou určitě takové ty obecné věci typu předvídatelnosti, stability a nějakým způsobem jistoty toho právního a daňového prostředí. Ale není to jenom o té legislativě jako takové, je to i procesech, které s tím souvisí, v daních konkrétně třeba, co se správy daní týče, tak aby podnikatelé měli pokud možno co nejsnazší přístup k daňové správě a vůbec obecně k daňovým procesům.
A pak je tady širší rámec, na který se také musíme soustředit, a tam je role státu taky významná, a to je hlavně, co se týče podpory vzdělávání, podpory digitalizace veškerých procesů souvisejících se správou státu. A to si myslím, že budou věci, které jsou spíš v obecné rovině, ale hodně mohou přispět k rozvoji prostředí pro startupy a obecně pro inovace.
I druhý blok konference CzechSetGo je za námi. Po krátké pauze se můžete těšit na třetí panel s názvem Znalostní ekonomika a lidé. Panel se zaměří na roli státu při rozvoji podnikatelské kultury.
Digitalizace Česka se neobejde bez vaší podpory. Přispějte prosím přes sbírku Česko Digitál libovolnou částkou na projekty, které uspíší inovační a technologický rozmach České republiky. Děkujeme. Digitalizace Česka se neobejde bez vaší podpory. Přispějte prosím přes sbírku Česko Digitál libovolnou částkou na projekty, které uspíší inovační a technologický rozmach České republiky. Děkujeme. Digitalizace Česka se neobejde bez vaší podpory. Přispějte prosím přes sbírku Česko Digitál libovolnou částkou na projekty, které uspíší inovační a technologický rozmach České republiky. Děkujeme. správnou dobu na správném místě. Konference CzechSetGo tentokrát o digitalizaci státu pokračuje právě teď.
A začíná poslední panelová diskuze dnešního dne. Tématem je klíčový význam vzdělávání a rozvoje podnikatelské kultury v Česku. Hlavní slovo tentokrát bude mít Josef Kotrba, chairman Deloitte, a jeho expertní hosté.
Klíčový význam vzdělání a rozvoje podnikatelské kultury.
Hello, welcome everybody. This is the third panel of today. Hopefully that you're not too. We have guests whom you mostly met already. Next to me, Radek Špicar, Vice President of the Conference Industry.
Thank you.
Eva Pavlíková, co-founder and CEO of Česko Digital.
Hello, nice to be here.
Nice to meet you. Do Zorila, the government CIO and head of NAKIT.
Hello, nice to be here.
And we have our remote participants, Yves Peterson, head of Startup Estonia. Sim Sikat from the government CIO of Estonia. You two guys will have a lot of things to tell us because in the statistics you'll see in a moment Estonia actually stands up in a couple of slides. So be ready. Petr Sedláček, professor of economics at Oxford. And Matěj Chytil, advisor to the deputy mayor of Prague. Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation. Hello.
The digital economy. I would like to start with a little bit of history because one of my hobbies is actually history, and that is industrial revolution and what we are living in right now. In the industrial revolution of 19th century, Czechia actually did very well because it had skilled like that. We had coal, we had decent location in Europe, and the nation took advantage of it greatly. And to be honest, the number of years we've been living out of that impact was 100 years. Great. We're now facing major changes in the economy. The economy will more and more rely on digital skills. There is basically no area of human life where digitalization in one form or another would not influence, whether you're talking the physical economy, people who like the pieces of steel, it's still very highly digitalized. If you look at energy, it's far less about burning coal and it's far more about how you digitally coordinate demand and supply in individual moments and so on. It's everywhere. Now, in order to use the digital revolution, as we did the industrial revolution 100 years ago, we have to be ready. The core of the digital revolution are actually people. There's nothing else we can apply than it. So my first questions will be, are we ready? Is what we have currently, is it enabling or is it hindering us in taking advantage of the digital economy? And of course, after discussing what the issues are, we should suggest ways to improvement. But now, may I ask for the slides? I prepared a couple of statistics about our educational level. In recent years, we have heard a lot about our lagging behind in mathematical education. Funnily enough, the latest measurement in 2018 has shown that we are actually coming back a little bit, but still from 2003, where we were number 10 in OECD, we still slipped to number 18, which is not too great. Now, Estonia, I said that there's going to be a lot of Estonian arguments. Estonia is showing that this is not necessarily a pan-European trend and that only countries in Asia, as Pavel pointed out, and North Korea are good at it. Estonia is growing since the first measurement, basically, very gradually. Digital or technological skills taken from the IMD World Digital Competitiveness Report. Again, slight decline, no tragedy, but certainly doesn't indicate that we are ready to jump 3 levels up. Mobile broadband subscribers, that shows how people are using the digital technologies. Again, slipping down, but still above the average, and interestingly enough, above the Estonia. So that's the only question I won't have to our Estonian guests. I was also wondering whether it's noted that we are closing down too much and that our language skills are actually lagging behind. I looked at this statistic last year, and I was ready to write an article that the situation is worrisome. And again, the 2020 figures have proven me wrong. So the scandal I was ready to start here is not happening unless 2021 shows a different trend. And somebody cut me off from the slides. I think it was enough for the introduction. So I think the question is clear. And if I may ask my physically present guests first to make their opening remarks on the topic.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Difficult question, but I think I would like to open with that the education is not the priority for our society. So I think it's not only about the skill set in schools, but it's about the mindset of the education itself as my responsibility to grow in my life.
Yes, I would certainly agree that, as in many other things, many other areas we've been discussing today, the cultural attitude is sometimes more important than the institutional or financial conditions. But it's very difficult to grasp. So keep it as a task for yourself to come out with a hint how to get better in this. So, Radko?
Thank you. And I like the idea of the Industrial Revolution and the Czech lens as a center of it in the 19th century. And I'll elaborate a little bit further on that, if I may. And I'll compare it to the current situation in the Czech Republic. So at that time, as you rightly pointed out, we had a number of people, cheaper and relatively high qualified. Do we have it still? I don't think so. Labor market is totally exhausted. We are now facing the end of one of the worst economic crises in our modern history. But despite that crisis, we still have more open jobs than unemployed people. So it was very difficult to find new people that companies needed during the crisis. It will be even worse after the crisis. So we don't have people who would be ready for 21st century new age digital era because we don't have people at all. This country is dying out. Are we an open country as we used to be at that time, at least within the Austro-Hungarian Empire and further Europe? No. When it comes to immigration policy, we are a closed country. We are very conservative. We are afraid of what's going on outside of our borders. We are acting like hobbits, you know, who are in their valley surrounded by the mountains and who are suspicious of everything which is coming from the outside, because in our history it was always wars or pandemics. So it's a closed country mentally, which is, I think, is a problem. infrastructure. We used to have, and that was an important part of the Industrial Revolution, we used to have great infrastructure in the traditional form. We had waterways, we had railways, and we had highways. Do we still have it? Well, it was our comparative advantages at the beginning of the 90s vis-à-vis Poland, for example. And I still remember, again with Martin Jan, trying to persuade big international multinational companies who were deciding whether to invest in Poland or the Czech Republic, how we persuaded them to invest in the Czech Republic. We said, look at Polish infrastructure. There is no such way as Polish infrastructure. They had no highways, nothing. Compare Poland to the Czech Republic nowadays. Thanks to the structural funds that they used in Poland, the speed of construction of highways is much better in Poland. And last but not least, what's the new infrastructure of 21st century? It's high-speed internet connection, right? And do we have it everywhere in the Czech Republic, even in the smallest villages? We don't have it. So we are lagging behind compared to where we were 100 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right, but I would like to kind of trim your pessimism a little bit. I think in terms of people, the slides which I was kind of cut off from was showing what do the international investors find attractive on Czech Republic. To be honest, skilled labor for reasonable money is still there. It's still there for us, it's still there for Poland, and I fully agree that we have too much of the labor kind of locked in less productive industries. And to be honest, government. I think that that the number of people who's employed by government is increasing rather than due to digitalization being decreased. That's very surprising.
Half a million people.
With maybe your comment, but it's a question for Vlado.
About the people working for government is not really the question for me, of course, but on the other hand, what I'm missing always is that, for example, if the digital service is coming, then no one is like taking care about the whole picture. So, for example, if I'm going to prepare the service and I'm going to invest to the service, for example, change of driving license. For me, it should be, on the other hand, the business case. How many people, like taking care about the people on the offices, how many people can I move to the other department? What can do, for example, what they can do better, for example, online, taking care of people and to support them when they are using services digitally. I do not think that immediately it would happen that we will cut off the employers. Because, for example, now, as I said, we can take care of people when they are coming to the offices and to the offices, to the like ministries, whatever, they need support. But for example, we need to think also if we are moving them to the online, we have to take care of them in the online environment, as banks do, as telco operators do, as e-commerce companies do. So on the other hand, of course, first of all, there will be the change of like work description, let's say, or the work they're doing. And then we can think, of course, about what's done. But on the other hand, for example, if you're using services and then in the back office you are still scanning, you are still working like manually, of course there is I would say there is a room for optimization as well.
You're an experienced consultant yourself, and you know how it starts in public sector. In private sector, when we come with a robotization proposal or any other digitalization proposal, it usually starts, okay, this little gadget will save you XYZ people, and this is where we start with. Sometimes it's about sales, sometimes it's about efficiency of production, but people is probably, I'd say, 3 out of 4 business cases for digitalization. So I think it's certainly something the government should look at, because as Radek properly said, we don't need like the hunger walls in Czech Republic. We actually need to release people from places where they are maybe helpful, but not as helpful as if they were kind of feeding the economy.
There's one thread, of course, what I see now after the pandemic as well, that all the people, or mainly all the people like working in digitalization, they realized they can work wherever they want to. So on the other hand, they can be attracted also by the employees in Germany, in somewhere else over the Europe, somewhere else over the world, and they can still sit at home. So on the other hand, this is not only about the companies here, but now I can see also many friends of mine, they are always saying that, okay, not even though I'm like moving to the different location, that I'm working from the different part outside of the Czech Republic, but also now I can think about the jobs, they are like available somewhere else. So just to follow the discussion what Radek started, it's another threat, I think, what we can face off.
May I add one comment to it? You are absolutely right. And this is a new situation because Czechs don't like to move. And it was our advantage because they stayed in the Czech Republic working here. But now, thanks to digitalization, they can stay in Prague, which is a beautiful city with a high quality of life, but they can work for somebody else behind the borders. So there's a big challenge there. You're right.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I've recently met with a situation that a foreigner with German background is moving to Czech Republic, not necessarily increasing our labor force because he's going to be serving his domestic market.
But we are back in a discussion about the vision, how to people move to the same vision and to put them to another country. So I think back to the vision, what is really important to do here.
True, true. But I would like a little bit more come back to the I hate the word, but the human resources question. Because efficiency in government, efficiency in industry, that all brings new people who can then feed the new success. And I'd like to ask Sim how they looked at that in Estonia, whether it was like more economic decision of how to save people, or what was the driving force?
Well, it's always easy to speak in 2 minutes about 20 years, right? I think the context for us is very clear that for a long time we have had sort of a buzzword that education policy is the best economic policy. So even if, I don't know, funding has not always reflected that and so forth, but at least that's been sort of the idea we strive for. So, for example, if we look at the PISA numbers now, which are so kindly, shared with you, so basically the children's aptitude in schools and in different subjects, that's the outcome of that. It's been highly valued. It's been also, highly invested in. Even though there's still, if you come to Estonia, our biggest debate is that are we doing enough still? For example, shouldn't teachers' salaries be, as high as IT specialist ones, or at least sort of significantly above sort of national average? So, long story short, there's still quite a bit of debate that goes on for us, but we are glad that exactly some things have gotten right. At the same time, I want to be really sort of cautious here, and also to help to frame the debate that, look, we need to look at the skills cycle beyond what children just come out of school with. So that's why the sort of other indicators that actually were quite sort of informative, and we could add some more. Our issue is that even if the general education is very well, to really get a good job, the specialist training and so forth, the numbers are much more mediocre. So my point being that, you have this great base, but to really have practical skills to go to market with, that's where a lot of retraining has to happen within companies, during your life afterwards, and so on. So the big picture has to come together, and we have been struggling to do that, I'm very honest here. But at least we have some sort of experiments, things, new strategy in place for that. And my last point, if I can add something to this discussion here, is to say that it has already been said, but in this time and age, it's only the people that the investors come after. So we have Eva here from Startup Estonia, right? How can our startup ecosystem be the best in the world? Well, basically, if we have folks that come here, even if in digital age you can work from a distance, it's the community, it's the ecosystem, it's the buzz, it's the spillover that matters. So we have to, if you want to strive in that age, we have to offer a good place for that. We have to have talents here, which means that, yes, we have to do even more to get them out of education system, as well as bring them and let them come in.
I think that it would be too ambitious to expect that the school system produces people who are precisely ready for their new job. I think to be honest, namely companies like us, it's quite natural that we then finalize the shaping. The problem is whether the the fresh graduate is really fit for that, or whether the time he spent at school is kind of really only for having a little bit fun. But I was about to ask Yves whether as a very specific representative of very specific type of employers, she's happy with the quality of newcomers on the labor market, and if there are things to improve, what are the important ones?
Yeah, it's a great topic. I think as already in the first panel today, we see that talent is an issue all over Europe and probably outside of Europe as well. What I'd like to stress is that, yes, it's good that we have good PISA results, but it's more important to think about where these skills are used. And it's only academic. I mean, point is that we need international knowledge. We need a diversity in the talent pool to really bring that, let's say, academic knowledge into the real life situation. And I think if you ask any founder anywhere in the world, what they would tell you is that diversity in the team is what really makes a difference. So what we are working on is global talent. We have Startup Visa program for that, but it's still not enough. We need to kind of see what is the balance between the immigration policy and being an open country, and again not being sort of too open to become a security issue or something like that. But our workforce productivity is still 80% of the European average at the moment. And if we see that we'd like to be at 110% of the European average, then the startup sector is something that can potentially produce that. So that's why we are really working on the diversity, meaning not only foreigners, but to look around here and see where we haven't used the potential. There's still only 30+% of women employed. There's only 15% of female founders. We have a huge potential in people who are over 50, who have maybe lost interest in their previous job or are seeing that new things are happening. We're not really engaging everybody yet.
No, that's really great to see ambition of being 110% of European average, and I think the ambition is an important thing we should all remember, and we sometimes forget. But when you spoke again more about the cultural things. But if you think about the product of educational system, what are the gaps, or on the other hand, something which you find cool about your newcomers?
Was that a question to me?
Yes. Because you spoke a lot about the cultural thing. I was because in the questions will come to what are the most important elements we want. So I was really curious about your point in this.
Yeah, I'm personally very excited about the new coding school project that we have already opened in the eastern part of Estonia, which is traditionally, let's say, a coal mining area. And to build a school for coding in that area is a mix of two important things. One is it's engaging people in a region where it's most acute to learn new skills, but also to have a school for coding. It's something that we really need. I mean, ICT sector is the most lacking in skill for already years and years. So that's combining two very important things, I think.
It's interesting that you started that in a coal mining area. I was in my remarks. I had a remark that university is going to be the next coal mine of Ostrava. So obviously, again, you're on the right track and a bit more advanced. I will now turn to Petr Sedláček, what his view on the things we discussed is, and in particular, having obviously experience with Czech school system, now teaching at Oxford, are there any hints for us in terms of which direction we should go?
Thanks. I'll start by bringing some more data to maybe help frame the discussion as well. So what I've been looking at is data on business dynamism, right? So how quickly businesses start up, how often they fail, and then how much they grow if they do survive. So interestingly, the Czech Republic in terms of startup rates and exit rates, which are often related to kind of productivity enhancing selection, the Czech Republic actually does pretty well. The startup rates are quite high. They're a little bit above the European average. On the other hand, what seems to be lacking is growth after surviving the first couple of years. And there, on average, businesses in the Czech Republic are quite far below the EU average. So I think this would be an interesting point to figure out whether, first of all, we're tapping, or the Czech Republic is tapping into the right pool of entrepreneurs, as was already pointed out. Maybe part of the labor force is kind of locked in somewhere else. And then something that was also discussed is the availability of qualified labor. Maybe this is really what's kind of dragging the business growth down. It would be interesting to understand. So in some countries there are data where you can tease this out, and there's a strong relationship between, for instance, entrepreneurship or the education of entrepreneurs and then subsequent performance of their businesses. I haven't seen this type of data in the Czech Republic, so I can't speak to that.
Well, that was more about your research activity, but what about yourself, your experience with the two educational systems and lessons we can take from them?
I tried to dodge that question a little bit, but failed, obviously. I have to admit, so from the perspective of me trying to become a academic economist, the type of training that I got back home in the Czech Republic was not something that could, get me towards those goals. And I went on and did a PhD abroad, and the difference in maybe not necessarily material, but in terms of kind of the delivery and seeing the applicability was quite striking. I haven't been in the Czech Republic for a long time. I don't know what the education system looks like now. It could very well have changed, but that was my experience, many years ago.
Yeah, I shared it. I was parachuted to the United States in 1990, and it was certainly a experience for the entire life. So a lot of sympathies for what you said. Matěj, any comments from your side, and what do you want as an inspiration to hear from our guests as well?
If I can challenge you here a bit, I think we can. I'll add a perspective here. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. Right? Yes, there's almost 500,000 state employees in the Czech Republic, and we've hired 7,000 new employees as of last year. That you might see as contrary to what we aim for. Efficient state and digitalization. Well, most of those people are actually in schooling. They are teacher assistants. Lots of them are police, and the Czech government decided to increase the military force as well. How many bureaucrats do you actually have? What do they do? I don't know. We've tried so hard to skew those numbers and to make them obscure that even I don't know how many people do work for the Prague City Council. So I think we need more transparency and honesty here. And I know that the topic of the debate is a bit different, but I like to focus. I would like I would like to challenge you to focus a bit more on talent and education in the public service, because we all agree that we need to retain talent, and we need better education for everyone in the country. I took a break from my service for the city of Prague, and I'm currently studying at the University of Oxford, doing a master in public policy. And I can assure you that there's 140 colleagues of mine here in the cohort from 55 different countries. And I can assure you that in all of those cases, maybe except for some of our colleagues from Eastern Europe, it's way more, it's way bigger an honor to work in the public service for most of those people. They work extremely hard and they fight extreme competition to get where they are. There's people from supreme audit offices who manage to go through incredible competition intellectually and when it comes to their output. This is something I think we tend to forget a lot. And what I would like to know from my colleagues from Estonia is actually whether the status and the talent for people who work in the public sector is something they're working with and something they need when they rethink how to digitalize the economy. So that's something I would like to learn from them as well. Because at the moment here in Oxford, I'm learning mostly from colleagues from other parts of the globe, and Estonia is a very interesting example that is close to us culturally.
I think unless there are protests, I would give a space to our Estonian guests to make a comment on that. But to be honest, after we finish this block and have the questions, I would like to return the debate a little bit more towards education. It's I don't dispute that the public sector deserves its quality people, but our focus in this debate should be how do we produce better people, more fit for the digital era, and how to release them from activities which are not that helpful into activities which are possibly moving us forward. Otherwise, I hear what you say. I agree partially, but the fundamental topic is how do we have more people who are qualified for the new economy, whether they work in public or private sector. But Eva, if you would take a short remark before we start with the questions.
The question was
it was like how attractive in Estonia is it to work for the government, and how and I would maybe add how attractive is for young Estonians to work in the school system, because that is maybe one of the problems we are facing in this country.
I'm really not the most competent person to answer that, but from a personal perspective, since I'm also working in a governmental program, all the team around me and the whole of the bigger institution is very proud to do what they're doing, because we see it as a mission to improve something for everybody in the country. For entrepreneurs, for the people who get to work in great companies. So unfortunately, I can just give my narrow view of our institution, or talk about more about the startups. But hope this gives a little bit of light.
But I think much important thing, because the question is whether we want to discuss only about a way how to lure them to the, let's say, the commercial sector, or the public sector is close to the non-profit. Because not only profit is the way how we can motivate the people, but also the sense what we do is most common with the public sector as well with the non-profit. So this is the question: what is the basic skill what we really need to do?
That's certainly important. I think that in the same time, what the school is preparing, or what the goal of the school should be, prepare people for real life and for life, particularly in this period of time. It's quite similar for all three sectors you mentioned: private, public, and not-for-profit. In the same time, motivation is another important thing. I think we are all struggling with that, and our employees are asking very similar questions on why do we do the job we do, what higher sense or meaning it has. So I wouldn't think that it's necessarily such a differentiator. What is really dangerous, if you have important segment in the society, such as the school system, which does not have sufficient prestige and doesn't attract the best people. I think that is one of the theories for the next part of the debate, i.e., what should have been done differently and what we can do differently in the future. But now, I think for the first part of debate, maybe short comment of Seem, if possible.
Yeah, well, I'll be happy to say that, well, government is not really the number one employer in the country. We are struggling to basically get the brightest folks in because two things. Well, first of all, it's been on purpose that we don't compete on pay, for good or bad. So, and secondly, obviously, exactly the whole startup and tech industry is so much more fascinating. You can fix not just the country, but global problems. But that's okay, because we actually adjust to that space. But if I can gear us back to the education topic, I think there are two things there, at least from my view, if I can sort of jump in. First of all, if you talk about here really skilling and competencies for the economy we are in, and the new economy so-called, and I quite take the point you said before that, look, general education or college will not prepare you for anything. So that's why a lot of it comes down to, learning through your life. What we have been trying to find and experiment with is the modes of learning. It's not just about that we have these programs available, but how actually what works? How can we attract people in? How can we attract, employers to send the people in? How to really, what are the programs where you can really learn in a short while and the best? So we have been quite big fans of the micro and nano degrees and trying to get our education system to offer them more. But we are also thinking a lot now and experimenting, how do we involve, the content from around the world? The Coursera's, the Udacity's. So basically saying that if we have this challenge to constantly learn through our lives, I think as countries we have to be open to that the training doesn't just have to come from within our countries. And that's quite a stretch of thinking for educational systems.
Okay, thanks a lot. But now it's time for a short questioning. And since most of our participants on the internet are Czech speakers, I will switch into Czech for a few seconds. Vážení přátelé, nyní nastal okamžik pro cirka jednominutový poll, a jsem opět v angličtině, protože musím vás ujistit, že v takto strukturovaném formátu přejít z jazyku do jazyku je docela obtížné. Hlasování se týká toho, na co se má vzdělávací systém soustředit, aby Česko uspělo v digitálním věku. Budeme na to mít cirka 1 minutu a vy už byste ty hlasovací možnosti měli mít na svých obrazovkách. Jsou to IT skills, je to aktivní znalost angličtiny, je to aktivní přístup k řešení problémů, je to matematická gramotnost, anebo je to, co nám chybí, soft skills. Přečtu to ještě jednou. IT skills, aktivní znalost angličtiny, aktivní přístup k řešení problémů, matematická gramotnost, případně soft skills. Já myslím, že všechny ty věci jako zaměstnavatele jsme u svých nově nastoupivších zažili, takže jsem více než napjat, které z těchto která z těchto zručností chybí účastníkům naší konference nejvíce. Já nyní pomalu ukončuji hlasování teď a čekáme přibližně 30 vteřin, než nám naběhnou výsledky. Vynechal jsem něco... excuse me, back to English. We have the results already, and it's really interesting. 38% completely overwhelming answer is the the area of IT skills. So I think your coding school in the coal mining area is addressing very well the problems of Czech employers. Active knowledge of English scored with 0, which, to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised because when having newcomers into a firm which has English as, let's say, 50% working language, I'm very frequently faced with situations where people know English very well, unfortunately can't use it very efficiently, but it scored 0. Active problem-solving attitude, 25%. Not surprising, it's relatively strong that our students are used to go in the school from task to task, which is very well structured. At the end of the day, there is A, B, C, D, multiple choice, which is a situation which surprisingly in real life you don't meet that frequently, unless you're a participant of this conference and you get 5 points where you have to select one. Mathematical skills, 25%, relatively high. Obviously correlated with IT skills. I think it's one family of things. And 13% would point out soft skills. But don't take that as nothing, because don't forget we said select only one. And 13% says that this is number one. And again, for example, speaking skills, not trained at Czech schools. Oxford, you know that in the UK, rhetorics would be something very familiar at high schools. So, lady, first again. What's your take from the voting and where your priorities are? And maybe jump one step ahead. What do you think we should do with that?
From our perspective as expert volunteers, I don't think so. We have an issue with the IT skills, because what is really important to do after that is that soft skills. But I'm not sure who understand what soft skills does really mean. Because from my perspective as a soft skill is cooperation, yeah? And I think what is not really good in this education level is that IT skills needs to be connected with the communication skills and with the cooperation together. Because IT staff quite frequently is, let's say, as a separate team in the business and in the teams. And even the digitalization is not only about IT skills, but how to IT skills practice for the user benefit. So from my perspective, definitely the soft skills and the cooperation is the topic number one. And we need to connect the IT skills together to the team as a, let's say, IT-ready teams to understand what the digitalization means.
I would say in real life, consultants are typically the interpreters between the two worlds.
Yeah, sure.
And we are happy that there are two worlds, that there are people who are 100% IT and other people 100% business, because that generates a substantial part of our revenue. But I think it is a good point that although people were really focused to the hard things, to the hard facts, hard skills, IT, and mathematics, it should not be forgotten that insufficient ability to communicate can lose more money than which is like generated by the hard skills.
totally agree, and that was the point I wanted to make as well, and I will get to it a little bit later. I slightly disagree that we have enough IT experts. I think we don't. The economy needs more IT experts, that's for sure. Like in Estonia, I think it would be a great idea to offer coding classes to our primary school students, just to test it, to see whether this is the way they would like to go. I think it would be really helpful. But going back to where I agree fully is the need to put together these two worlds that develop in a different directions, and we have to put them together. Why? Because we need to be creative. When you are creative, you are able to offer unique and original solutions. And you can be only creative if you boost diversity, because creativity comes from diversity. And again, if we went from Estonia to Finland, they realized that this is a must. And now, and I saw it myself, and I was fascinated by it. When they built the new campus of a Finnish university, they built an arts faculty next to a technical faculty, which is fantastic because we have to put these worlds together. And if a company has a separate IT department where nobody else wants to go because those are specific people whom I don't understand, those lunatics, with zeros and ones, that's a company which will fail. Because digitalization is not just one part of your business. It is your business. And not only in IT companies, but in automobile companies, as Martin said at the beginning. So we have to integrate digitalization into all segments of our business, and we have to understand each other. And it really starts in kindergartens, in primary schools. Students must be able to combine natural sciences with the humanities, and we must not separate these worlds. Because when we do it, and unfortunately in the Czech Republic we do it a lot, we as employers, we end up with highly qualified IT programmers coming from great universities like ČVUT. But these girls and guys, they cannot lead teams, they cannot speak English properly, they cannot argue with others, they cannot write, and that makes them difficult to employ.
But the question is how to get out of point A, which you just described, to a point that will be truly fit for the digital revolution.
Okay, a few recommendations. First of all, we have to pay teachers better. It's not everything, but it starts with money. It's now very popular to criticize our current government, but in this respect, I think we have to admit that they are doing a good job. The wages of teachers are rising. If the government added one more thing, which is to give more freedom of maneuver to directors of schools, I think it would be great. Like this current Minister of Education is one of the best we've had in the last 30 years. So the focus is there and it's helping. Then we should come up with coding classes, 3D printing classes, or I don't know, drones, driving classes in primary schools, so that young students at primary schools don't grow without a contact with technical subjects. I don't want them I don't want to force it on them. I don't want final exams, composed of coding, because for some people it's difficult. Not everybody is a natural born coder, but I want everybody to test it, to see whether they like it or not. And then we have to change corporate governance of our universities. We have to open them more. A rector of a university must be a true head and a principal and a chief of the university. Now it's the deans of the faculties, so we have to change that. Supervisory boards, now we have them, but they are just there. They have no influence over the strategy and the vision of the university. That must be changed. So there are a lot of specific things we have to change if we want to be next United States. Yeah.
Radko, that was a great program for the
next 30 years.
Minister of School, but Minister of Education. But there was one thing missing, because there was a lot of new tasks on people who are active in the educational system. But to be honest, they have their plates pretty much full already. And one thing which comes on repeatedly as a problem, that the reporting requirements, the various bureaucratic tasks they have to fulfill, is extremely demanding, taking unnecessary and disproportional part of their time.
It's like in healthcare. It's the same. Doctors are doing bureaucracy.
And of their mental energy. So I think that if you remove that, and it kind of has a lot to do with what was discussed in the previous panels, but if you do that, what you said will partially appear naturally. Vlado, any comments from your side?
Oh, I think it would be better to have different question because Radek was very talkative.
He was tough.
Sorry for that, guys.
But I remember when Jack Ma was asked what he would taught children when they were young, and he said, you have to teach them music, sport, and art. Everything else they will like, because this is what is forming your attitude. And I think this is what Radek was also describing, that we do have lots of like very good students. We do have lots of very skilled students. But on the other hand, if they go to the company and work in, for example, in our company as well, you have to, for example, you have to work. You have a work that you probably you do not like every day. Sometimes you have to do what you do not like, and you cannot just like throw your phone, throw your computer, and just leave. And sometimes it's happening. On the other hand, you have to take the decisions many times, and I think that our schools are not very good in that. That people coming out of schools, they are really like they do not know how to say that we are going this way. Just to say that this is the right direction. Probably it's not, or not probably it's not, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's yes, but the decision has to be made, has to be taken. So I think that I would just follow also what two colleagues said and follow Eva. It's more about the soft skill now, and not the soft skill we really think it is, just a soft skill that you stay in front of the people and talk and stuff like that. You do not need really necessary this, but about the cooperation, about the working attitude, I would say. So I think this is like something what is a lot missing.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So again, I'll turn to Eva and Sim for the Estonian inspiration. Estonians are famous for being introverts. I've heard a lot of jokes about how you recognize an Estonian extrovert. It's the person who, when talking to you, is watching your tips of the shoes. So you guys certainly do not look like illustrations of this joke. Is it because of the great Estonian educational system who taught you how to speak in public? Eva.
You want to start?
Okay. Sorry, yeah, I had all the people on the screen. I was confused for a moment. Just a comment about the education system in general. I think it's always going to be slower, much slower than the progress we see in entrepreneurship. So whatever the economy needs, or the government needs, or the people need, cannot be translated fast enough into our curricula. For example, there is a high school university in Estonia where you can actually study to take a degree in becoming a startup entrepreneur. But even that, I think it's probably too ambitious to say that when you get that degree, you are a ready-made 100% startup entrepreneur. So I think it's a combination, always going to be a combination between academic skills and all the extracurricular activities and private programs that you get offered locally or via online, etc., etc. So there is no like one thing. And another thing I'd like to say is that people are different, and some people are really good at something, some other people are good at soft skills versus the IT skills. So it's really in the end of bringing the right teams together. And now when we are talking about the next big wave of innovation, which is the deep tech approach, where we see even more the convergence of different methodologies, the convergence of technologies, approaches. So we need to focus even more on how to bring different skills together, the scientists together with entrepreneurs, vice versa. So it's not that black and white, so that we have a perfect curriculum and then we will have a system that serves everybody. So I don't know if I answered the question, but just my view.
Okay, no, it's really interesting because, as I said on the initial slides, Estonia was doing particularly well in mathematics, and you two are walking examples of the soft skills. But Sim, any additional comment from your side?
Well, the reason why we are famously being considered introvert is the reason why we do things digital, because then you don't have to interact, right? If the machine takes care of it, awesome. That's a bit of a joke. My point being that, look, I think what has changed for us and why the generations now are different, what the stereotype used to be, is the exposure to the world, to other cultures, to, foreign study, foreign investors coming in back in the day. These days, people in the startup companies who do business globally, who have colleagues from around the world. I mean, that all changes that. So my point being that it's not that much school, but it's the exposure and the real life, and in that sense, the sort of lifelong learning, if you don't mind me using that word in this context, is what has changed it. And that's why, I mean, if I want to somehow make it like an action item out of this, my own view, and this is not necessarily government policy, but my own view is that we need to just basically, obviously, use all the measures and fundings we can to increase this exposure. Study exchanges. Why Erasmus is such a big sort of benefit from European Union, because that's what sort of stuff that brings it out. That's what adds the soft skills. That's what basically complements the official education.
In my notes, I have it as note number 1. The international mobility exposure. I think it's extremely important, and you used an important word, exposure. It's partially the international mobility, but partially what has turned to be very important in how successful people are in early phases in their career is that they were exposed to working environment already in study. That, for example, by us, it's the biggest differentiators. It's not the grades, not necessarily the intelligence, but people who work as students are simply far faster in catching up. But maybe we are approaching to the end. We have last 3 minutes, so I would ask Petr and Matěj for what they believe is so important that it should fill last 1.5 minutes for each.
Let's go for it.
Okay, I'll start. So obviously, I'm not an employer, but the University of Oxford has a great reputation, and the subscription rates for the courses here are huge. So we're also in the business of looking for talent. And for us, when we do these interviews with high school students that are applying for the degrees, we're really looking for problem-solving abilities. So my vote would go for that to be included in the education system. I can also say that soft skills are incredibly important, but we're trying to cut through those to see whether students that went through, for instance, private schools where they get trained in soft skills, we're trying to cut through that to see whether they can also solve problems. But those 2 points are the most important from our point of view.
Thank you. Do we have Matěj?
Yep. So I told you I'm here with 140 students from across the globe, and education policies are one of the top 3 focuses on people in here. It's education, health, and environment, right? I'm not an expert on education policy, and it's not my path. One of the reasons is, as we just noticed, everybody has an opinion on how education should work and what teachers should do. It has reasons. There's reasons to that. We've all been to school, and most of us have children who go there. So my point here is, it would be great if what we feel and want schools to become will be manifested through the elections, and if we give more space for education policy experts, expert teachers, and education researchers who focus their careers on the question how to make education better, and we give them room in places like the Ministry of Education
and in our national debate. And to tap into Radek's comment, if we had to pinpoint one place where to start an overhaul to get a better education for all our kids, I think it would be the Faculty of Education, all of them. Not just universities in general, not just, you know, I'm here with Radek, but I think it's a big ask, what he asks for. And if we nail it down and we go down the Finnish road, I mean, you know, meaning Finland here, then the overhaul is starting at the Faculty of Education, and it's all hands on deck there. Because if the best people are there, then you get good people in schools, and that's where you start. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, and I think that it was a very good last comment in this debate, very much focused on a particular path of activities, which we all can agree that leads to improvement in this area. We have exhausted the time, and similar as other panels, we didn't leave any time for questions from the audience. I would first of all very much like to thank to all members of the panel. They devoted to us half day, which is a major investment. I would like to thank to our distant panelists for their valuable contribution. They obviously at the home office they could have found far more pleasant ways how to spend time. So thanks all to everybody. And last but not least, I would like to thank to all of you who are watching and who've spent again half day with us and our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all for today, and once more, big thanks.
A to, co činí naši zemi atraktivní pro nejlepší talenty, to nám prozradí vedoucí partner v oddělení auditu Deloitte David Batal.
The Czech Republic has given to the world many unique innovations and inventions in a history. But now it seems a little bit that we are losing the power to fully utilize it for the future. You know, if we are looking on a state digitalization and institutional services offered to firms and people, it's on very low level. And it's quite often mentioned as one of the main reasons for the lower performance of our current economy. And you know, this country is built on very long-term business and industrial tradition. And we were also able to develop like the startup culture really based on the technology traditions also. And you know, we must really make this country interesting for our talented people, because if they will not be able to get sufficient opportunities locally, they will go abroad and they will succeed there. And you know, I think that the digitalization is really important, and it's not about talking about it, but really doing the acts. You know, I have like a few weeks ago, I have seen like TV commercial, and it was like state digitalization. There was like a lady explaining how fantastic it is that you don't have to go to those offices, that you can do everything by the computer. And interesting was that in this commercial was no single activity named or mentioned what you can do by the computer. And we are currently in a process changing the permanent address. So I was like, okay, let's see how the state is digitalized. And so I tried to searching, and what I found out, you know, sure, you have to go there, you need new ID, so you have to go there several times. Okay, maybe I can book some time and date. No, this is not possible, you have to stay in the line. Okay, maybe I can pre-fill some forms. Yes, you can find a form, but on the top it's only for information, you have to fill it in office. So at least I hope that at the end, at least the opening hours are updated. So maybe instead of creating TV commercials, would be better to do some real actions.
konference CzechSetGo je za námi. Díky, že jste byli s námi, dozvěděli jsme se spoustu zajímavých věcí, nastínili jsme nové otázky a zítra tedy budeme pokračovat s tématem, jak Česko dostat mezi top 10 znalostních ekonomik v Evropské unii. Tak se nezapomeňte připojit. A já ještě doplním, že zítřejší konference bude probíhat v českém jazyce. Stále také platí, že přispět na digitalizaci Česka můžete prostřednictvím Česko Digitál. Hezký den a díky, že jste alespoň jeho část strávili s námi. Těším se na zítřek.
Věřím, že jste se bavili a že se dneška odnášíte nové perspektivy. A budeme se na vás těšit zítra, kdy společně s dalšími experty nastíníme konkrétní kroky na cestě k digitalizaci Česka.